Okay, all those in approval of the minutes are reviewed, please say aye. Aye. Against, that motion carries. And that brings us to the consent calendar of November 7th. Motion to open that consent calendar.
I'll make that motion.
First by Paul, second by Chris.
Mr. Chair, we had on consent calendar for November 7th, we had item A, 421 East Coast Street was approved as submitted. Item B, 4099 Foothill Road, got a final approval. Item C, 1040 Coast Village Road, got a final approval with conditions. Item D, 2222 Bath Street was continued indefinitely. Item E, 131 Anacapa Street was postponed indefinitely. Consent last week was reviewed by Paul Zink and Chris Gilliland.
Thank you. All those in agreeing with the minutes as reviewed, please say aye. Aye. Against those, that motion carries. And a motion to open the November 14th.
I'll make that motion.
First by Paul, second by Dawn.
Okay, for consent calendar today, November 14th, we had item A, 331 North Alisos and 930 East Gutierrez. Got a project design approval and final approval as submitted. Item B, 550 Olive Street. Got a project design approval and final approval with conditions. Item C, 2661 Talent Road. Got a final approval as submitted. Item D, a project in the Alisal Road right-of-way was continued indefinitely. And consent today was reviewed by Chris Gilliland and Paul Zink.
Thank you. All those in favor of the
Can I ask
minutes?
you a question?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
The item C was approved as final approval, as submitted? I had to walk out early, just making sure. Okay, cool.
Okay. All those in agreement with the minutes as reviewed, please say aye. Aye. Against, that motion carries. And that brings us to item D, announcements, requests by applicants for continuances and withdrawals, etc.
Mr. Chair?
Yep,
I
Paul.
have two comments I want to go over with staff. It had to do about the airport walk that we had before the Planning Commission meeting for the T hangars that were being proposed for Atlantic Aviation. During the site visit, we noticed that there was a generator that was next to one of the glass jetways.
Mm-hmm.
And the generator is extremely large and not appropriate for our building that we built. And so I want staff to look in to see if that received ABR approval and whether or not the size, the height, the mass of that generator was present in the drawings that we reviewed. And if not, I'd like to have a review after final for that object and bring it back to the board.
Okay.
And then the second item is we've passed some rules that now require a lot of buildings to get fire sprinkled. And so 16 West La Cumbra, it was a small strip center just down from the corner of State and La Cumbra. And I wanted to check to see if that project went through ABR because there's a large fire sprinkler manifold being added to the outside of that building.
That did. I believe I saw that on consent calendar, right on the front facade of the building.
Okay.
And it was approved. I believe it was going to be screened with landscaping, so I don't know if the landscaping might not be in place yet.
Okay, as long as that got caught by planning, because there seems to be a lot of buildings getting new fire sprinklers,
Yeah.
and that infrastructure is not being reviewed by
Right.
us. But that one was reviewed?
There was landscape screening, and also the pipes, I believe, were to be painted to match the color of the outside of the structure, so it blended more with the
Okay,
with that.
cool. Those are my two items. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thanks, Paul.
See, I have a couple of small things, Mr. Chair. Gary Mosel and Keith Rivera will be absent today.
Okay.
And also a minor change on the agenda, item 3, 900 Calle de los Amigos. The footer on the agenda says they're requesting final approval of grading in residential buildings, but they're not quite ready with the grading plan. So you'll just be reviewing the residential buildings today.
Okay.
Okay?
Okay. All right. With that, subcommittee reports, I don't think we have any. And brings us to our first item of the evening, 1085 Coast Village Road.
I don't even need this thing.
Okay, state your names for the record and proceed.
Kevin Dumaine from Design Arc Architects, architects for the project.
The oval button needs to get pushed.
Kevin Dumaine from Design Arc Architects.
Aaron Carroll with Arcadia Studio Landscape Architect.
If you press the middle button, it'd be great.
Linda Olner, Coast Village Inn.
And bottle.
Okay.
Okay, so we have some minutes from the last review here. I'll just read through quickly. Continued indefinitely. The site planning and revisions to the parking entries from the street are acceptable. Provide as much landscape as possible. Screen the propane tanks. Provide photographs from Highway 101 off-ramp and from across Highway 101 toward the site. Provide aerial photographs of the site. Study the architecture and massing as they relate to each other and to the canopy for a cohesive style. The requested zoning modifications are acceptable and pose no negative aesthetic impact. The additional parking is a benefit to the project. Study the feasibility of moving the jacaranda tree at the relocated driveway and provide a landscape plan with low water use requirements. Okay.
Okay. Well, we've been to our first round of DART, and we're getting ready to resubmit to the city. So today we're here for another conceptual review to kind of get some of your feedback on the changes that we've made per the previous meeting. So to start off with, brought in some aerial photos for you so you have a better idea where the site is. And you can see that the site is from this street here, Coast Village Circle, all the way to about there. You can see the Caltrans property is where all the trees are that screen the property from the freeway. And you can see a couple of different pavement colors on the site. Okay, in addition to the aerials, we were requested to bring some more site photos. Actually, I only have one copy of each of these. These are the views from the freeway side. First one Aaron took going northbound. Second one should be from sort of the directly across the freeway, more or less. Oh, okay, here's the first one. And then the second one's across the way. And then the third one is from looking back from the sort of the southwest side of the property, from across the freeway. All right. So today what we've come to show you is a series of site changes as well as some building changes. So on the site plan, we followed the requests of the board, and we've increased the landscape down at the west end of the property. The strip closest to Coast Village Road has been widened, to create a little bit more of a buffer. Took it as far as we could without impacting the back out distances of some of the parking spaces. Then over by the propane tank, we've gone and we've added some new planter spaces which will provide screening around the propane. So that's been done, which will increase the landscape area in those areas. Then as we move over to here where we had the trellis, it used to be a 3-car trellis. And this is where the auto, sort of the hand detailing would be done. We've shrunken that back to a 2-car trellis, kind of that's what we sort of will need with the smaller hand detailing operation, and it frees up another parking space for the overall operation. And then sort of the biggest change you'll notice is that the entry tower is no longer skewed. It's been squared up, simplified, and we'll see that those changes in the elevations. We've also got we brought a civil plan if we need it today, and sheet number 4 has been updated with a canopy exhibit if we want to look at that. But let's go ahead to the, so on the rest of the site, the parking here, the driveway circulation to the car wash, position of the car wash tunnel, those are all the same. Nothing's changed. What? No. So the new floor plan with the squared off tower, it's a little simpler. There's just a few sort of changes to the interior layout. There'll be an office space here. This will be sort of the main entry cashier. And the tenant improvements will all be done for a designer, an interior designer later affiliated with the Chevron. And then you can see the impact on the roof plan. Tower's been squared up, but we still have that element of the taller tower here because it sort of helps bridge the two masses of the existing roof form here and then the roof form over the car wash tunnel. And the tower helps to link those, provide some ventilation up top for equipment, and designate sort of our entry focal point to the building. So the building's gotten a little bit simpler. We've gone to kind of instead of the sort of Saracen arch that we had before, we have a simple, horizontal header across the opening, so we can do sliding doors. Put a canopy over the top. The roof, we've gone with the flat tiles. Looking in the neighborhood, there's several buildings that already have flat, terracotta tiles instead of the barrel tiles. And with this idea, we can work with the existing canopy. The canopy, we're assuming, won't take the load of a barrel vaulted tile, but we would change it out from being the brown flat tile to a terracotta colored. So now we can make the canopy and the main building match and be a little more consistent. To the west of the tower, this element where we have the office and the trash enclosure, we've gone to a flat roof. It's really it's not in the same plane as this portion of the building over here, so it was a little odd, also having the sloped roof condition, and then it had because of the angle of the car wash behind it, it had an odd sort of trapezoidal quality to it. So now it's a little bit more like the car wash. We have a little consistency of these details. But massing-wise, we're fairly happy with how that works out with the existing piece over here. I think a few minor changes to some window locations, but more or less very similar to what we had before. And we're just, working to make the parapets and some of the detailing a little bit more consistent throughout the project. Tower is a little bit broader, so it's slightly different. Articulation's a little bit different. But we still have little corner elements where we need them. On the back, we still have the buttresses to sort of embellish that element. The vines along the freeway. The end elevations have also been updated to reflect these changes. You can kind of see the new tower design. And, if we want to plot the other drawing, we put a photograph of the canopy in, and what we're proposing is just to match the tiles on the roof and to plaster the columns of the canopy. The existing canopy is right there. Landscape plan? Sure.
First of all, I went through all the plant palette and changed a couple plants around for their drought tolerance, and I kind of typed up a memo for Chris to look at regarding each plant. So I think we're in compliance with low water use as far as the plant palette. We added some sword ferns around the propane tank to screen that. We have more vines along this chain link fence, which will also help screen as you go east on Coast Village Road. We have a little bit more planting here around the air water area, for a hedge to screen that. The jacaranda tree, we're proposing to either transplant it or plant a new 48-inch box, but the location is right here. As far as other comments, I think that covers most of them. So,
And the plans have been submitted to the arborist, who's recommending the new tree.
so we'll probably go with the 48-inch box jacaranda to replace the one lost.
Okay. Sally?
I think we've covered all the questions. Yeah, I think that's what we have to present.
Sure.
And unfortunately, I forgot to talk to Kevin about this, but would it be possible to have some sort of an awning or something over the front door? I know Santa Barbara has their restrictions. You can't have sides and stuff. It would just help with people walking in the front door if it's raining. There's no protection.
There actually is an awning on his drawings.
I gave you that canopy, yeah.
Oh, but we didn't talk about it. Okay, great. Great. Well, perfect.
Yeah, it'd be a
Fabric?
it'd be a fabric
Okay,
canvas,
perfect. Thank you.
canvas or umbrella.
Can we shut this off now?
Okay. With that, I'd like to open it up for public comment. Anyone for public comment? Seeing no one, bring it back to the board for questions. Paul?
I actually had one question for Chris over the landscape. Question. It had to do with, here's the propane tank, there's a little finger, and then there's a parking space. Are these the swordfish, the sword fern? And how tall do they get, and how, is it a hard plant or is it a soft, fuzzy plant?
It's more of a soft form, kind of upright. It's 3 to 4 feet.
And I guess my question really for Chris was whether or not they would survive long term if someone was really using this as a parking space, and if that was an appropriate plant for that spot.
That was going to be my question, was what's the height of the propane tank, for one? Because I didn't necessarily see that as the appropriate plant for screening that. I think something more of a hedge might be more. Oh, it's 3 feet off the ground?
I believe it's about 3 feet off the ground. It's between 3 and 4 feet.
3 and
Okay.
4 feet.
So, in answer to your question, Paul, it's a very tough plant. And if indeed the tank is only 3 feet, then it should be sufficient.
Okay. That was my only question. I think the design changes are great. And I like the changes that you're making to the canopy. And I assume one of them also would be changing out that blue band, or at least incorporating the color scheme. I know it's a chevron.
They had lights up there.
Oh,
Yeah.
The spanners, the whole 9 yards, which we had to take down.
We're keeping it as simple as we can.
Yes.
We'll cross that bridge later.
Okay.
But thank you for the tile roof matching.
Dawn?
Yeah, can you go over again? I was looking at something else on the plans, and I completely missed the part about what you're doing to the canopy.
Oh, okay.
I didn't see a drawing that showed it.
I had it in a little exhibit on Friday, so let's pull it out.
But it's not in this set?
No.
Did you show it already, and I just missed that part of the
You only use
presentation?
words.
I showed the photo.
Okay.
What we did is we used that photo we showed you in color, and we threw in a note. So the idea is that we're going to take the roof here, which is already a flat tile, and that's sort of a brown shake color. We're going to swap it out for a terracotta flat tile, and that'll be consistent with one of the banks across the street, and then some of the other buildings in the neighborhood. And then what we do is we'll match that roof material on the main building. These will be lighter weight than doing a barrel vaulted tile, so we won't have to impact the existing structure. So that'll change. And then these are slumpstone columns, but they'll get plastered over and become match the building.
And my other question was, did we talk about, or did you present last time that you were going to be using, proposing the flat tile with the barrel vault at that ridge? Or is that new? I don't remember that last time.
We kind of fumbled through that last time.
The roof and what kind of roof we thought was appropriate. But because I think you were proposing something that wasn't even a terracotta roof at the time. Am I mistaken?
I couldn't remember at the time whether it was terracotta or brown. They were brown. And the drawings were all drawn to be like a barrel vaulted with the vertical lines. And Chris pointed out that when you do a flat tile, it should look like horizontal, which sort of matches the pictures better.
Okay. And you mentioned that you were picking the flat terracotta versus the barrel because the flat terracotta is a lot less weight.
Yeah.
What could the difference possibly be between a flat terracotta and a barrel vault terracotta?
Less material. Just adds up. And I'm not even sure if those are actual terracotta or if they're just going to be terracotta colored. We're going to have to see what the engineering of what the canopy will allow us to support.
Okay.
So these may be concrete tiles.
They may have to be, yes.
They may be. It wouldn't be concrete. It would be lightweight concrete. Or something, because concrete is just as heavy as terracotta. So.
Okay.
Okay, no more questions.
Chris? I had a question about the, and Chris, you may be able to help me here. The fencing, all the landscaping is being done on your side, and you have chain link fencing that you're doing here. You have little pockets here that you will plant the PAT. Just go over for me again what this is in here that fills that area.
That's Boston ivy.
Okay, so and the fence itself is going to be covered in what?
That's going to have a Thunbergia vine, which will literally cover it in about 6 to 8 months, just solid. You won't even see it.
Okay, so that just creates the backdrop. And then these plants that you're planting in here, are these meant to be things that stay below the top of this fence, or
Yes.
or do any of them come above it?
The only thing that would be above it would be this existing pine tree and this new sycamore.
Which is this one?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I guess my question to Chris, and as a comment in terms of having a visual appearance of a long green solid line with a clean line on top. If you, in your review of it, you could give some consideration as to whether or not that is the optimum look here, or should they have things maybe every so often that blurs that line, as it crosses the top of it. Because sometimes the long straight green could seem to be more of a built form as opposed to more of a softer. Yeah, and that's my only comment. Yeah. Okay. So that was my only question. Okay. So on to comments, Paul.
I like the proposal. I think it's a great project. Studying the architecture and seeing how there's some of the barrel tile on top of on the rake wall, and then the flat tile. I don't have a problem with that look, but I would like to see probably 3 tiles making that kind of cap, like 2 on the sides and 1 on the top, if that makes sense. Versus sometimes they just do 1 on the top, or I'm not sure, but make it look substantial as the tile is going up on that edge. But other than that, I think it's a great project.
Thanks, Don.
Yeah, I appreciate the changes that you made, Kevin. And I know there's a solution in there somewhere for the roof tile, but I'm not sure exactly what it is. I'm not seeing a barrel tile at the ridge and a flat tile, on the rest of it. That doesn't mean it couldn't look good. I'm having a hard time visualizing it. And I think you should look at what you really want to propose and what the weight is and of the proposed material before we finalize that. I'm having a hard time with the flat, with the barrel at the ridge. But I understand you have a problem with a potential problem with weight. So I'd almost rather see one or the other. That may just be me. And the only other thing I have, thanks for making an effort on doing something to the canopy, but I noticed that you have, this is probably a flat overhang with rafter tails kind of attached to the bottom of a flat overhang, right? Like wood, or these are probably, I don't know, I should point on there.
Yeah, it could either be a flat soffit or it may be sloped. I have the ability to go either way at this point.
Okay. Well, what I was kind of hoping is that we could take the canopy just one step further and putting some corbels on either side of the new plaster square. I know it's never going to be beautiful, but it would, in an effort to make it look a little less industrial, just to pick up on the detailing and tie the detailing in with the overhang that you're using would be kind of a nice gesture. A couple on each side going in one direction, or simulating the support of a beam that's somewhere underneath there that we can't see. I don't know, something like that. Or a corbel that's plastered, something like that. Otherwise, I think it looks good. That's it.
Thanks, Don. Chris?
Thank you. Yeah, I think for me, I think the eastern half of this project looks fine. All the plant choices, you have a lot of nice variety of planting. It's sort of the western half that I'm having a little trouble with, and I think part of it is the ferns. As Chris had mentioned, there is sort of risk of that really long horizontal line. It would be nice to break that up a little bit with possibly some taller planting. And then, obviously this is your decision, but the combination of the sword fern with the blue carex, you have a very yellow-green in the fern and a very blue, and to me it's just a very awkward combination. So I would possibly encourage you to, consider another plant for one or the other of those. And then, if indeed the propane tank is only 3 feet, I think the ferns would still work over there, but it might be nice to have something a little more like a woody shrub, for instance. I don't want to give you too much maintenance as far as pruning a hedge, but those are just a couple of the observations that I'd seen. I think the vines that you chose will certainly cover that whole fence, but as Chris had mentioned, it'd be good to break it up a little bit. I know you have the sycamore that does that, and also the Canary Island. But maybe there's some sort of accent at the end of the egress from the car wash, and then maybe somewhere in between the two trees, just to break that line a little bit. So I think, and then I was, you have 4 vines, 4 wisteria on the arbor, and that's going to be extremely heavy over time. You might consider trimming that down to maybe 2, so you're not battling that too much. Other than that, I think everything looks fine.
Thanks, Chris. So a few things. I mean, I like the changes you've made to the orientation of the main structure. I think that's worked really well. And the additional area you've given to screening. With Chris and per my earlier question, I'd like to see a review of that design palette along the fence there that would give us a little bit more undulation. So that would be something that you could look at. And on the roof tile for Dawn, I'm echoing the same thoughts as Dawn. I think that a flat tile can work very well, but where we are at this juncture is that if we're going to think about using a flat tile, we need to see the details of it. We need to see how much edge exposure we're going to get, what it's going to look like closer up. So given that, I would suggest, as Dawn has said, you guys do your research on whether or not this roof needs to take that or whatever it is, so that we could know for sure that this is what you want to propose. Because, once you propose it, we really need to see the details of it. And at this kind of drawing, we're not really picking up the nuance of that kind of tile right now, whether it's a thicker tile at the edge or not, or whether it's very slim. And if you're going to go the route of working on the canopy first, and then you figure out where you go from the canopy, then you're matching it to the building. And I'm just taking off what you said. Then there's a process that you're going to have to go through. But we would like to see what the result of that is and what we're actually approving before we could say that that's a goal. You know what I'm saying? And then lastly, again with the canopy, Dawn was saying at this level of detailing, we're seeing hints of little things that you have there. But my concern about it is that, like Dawn, is that I'd like to see a little bit more detail of the element of this tower, and for me, I'd like to see that the blend of where we're going in terms of either you're going more modern or whether it's staying more softer and historic. I'd like to see exactly where that is. And the drawing is hinting at something, but we're not quite sure. So I'm just trying to get a little bit more detail here on what the look exactly is going to be like detail-wise. And then, then we could say, okay, that looks great. Massing and everything is fine. I mean, I'm fine with the massing. I'm fine with the layout and the planning and the amount of landscaping. So the project is really, this kind of a go. But just as those little details on the building, which tile, how much detail we have up there and what it looks like, I think that's where we'd like to get some more information. Yeah. And with that, I think that we're open to...
Mr. Chair?
Yep.
I'll make a motion, and this is for positive comments going on to the Planning Commission. The first one is to provide some additional information and details about the roof tile, materials and details. The second one is for the applicant to consider adding faux supports to the existing canopy. Third item is to study the landscaping along the 101 freeway property line, breaking up the vertical height. And the fourth item is to provide building details to show the design style.
I'll second the motion. I have one comment about the motion, and that is if we could just add the word column supports to the canopy. When you said faux supports, just faux column supports.
That's fine.
So that they understand that they're not being asked to add any additional columns, just to clarify. And you have
And,
Great.
Landscape stuff.
Oh, yeah, you got most of it. I mean, the plant combo is sort of a something for you to consider. But you mentioned to break up the vertical, and it was actually the horizontal line of the fence that we want to break up along that 101 property. Just a slight clarification.
Break up the horizontal design.
Yeah, the horizontal line of the top of the fence. And it could be that some of the vegetation from Caltrans is sort of hanging over that. I don't have great pictures to see that area. So if indeed you have some vegetation that's already sort of making its way over that fence, that may serve to satisfy that. But you could just show us that at the next meeting.
Great. So all those in favor of the motion, please say aye. Aye. Against? That? Dawn? So motion carries. Good. Yep. All right.
You have that one new sheet.
Yeah.
Take that sheet 4.
Take that one there. Do you need this or is it? You don't need it. Okay. That brings us to the second item of the evening. 501 East Gutierrez Street. Sorry. Well. We have a huge crowd in the audience.
Vertical project.
Eventually will be. When I add my 4-story. No, this is really pretty simple.
For the record, sir.
For the record, my name is Doug Reeves. I'm the architect for the project. And we have a project that really abuts 3 different streets: Robertson Avenue, Olive, and Gutierrez. This is basically the building. It's set back in from the property lines slightly. Richardson, if you haven't been down there for a while, is basically an alley, the way it's being treated, because everybody's parking at 90-degree angles to the property lines because there is no parking. Home Improvement Center is located right here. There's some other industrial buildings on the other side. This building is basically a 1-story Butler building. And I was going to bring you a little walkabout on the from the elevation standpoint. Okay. This is our particular building. It's basically 6 buildings jammed together that were constructed at different times. So coming down Richardson, these photographs here are taken at this corner looking towards Home Improvement Center.
So we are seeing the side of that one?
That's in the front. That's on this side.
Right.
So I'm just going to walk you around.
And you're
building.
pointing that out as being your project?
This is our project right here.
Okay.
So it's basically a 1-story. Well, as it comes around, it changes this
into
location.
this. Okay.
Yeah.
Even though it's painted 2 different colors.
Right.
Okay.
There's multiple buildings.
I see.
So these buildings were all kind of, this was built at one time. These 2 were built at a different time. There's another building in the front. And that's where I was going to kind of walk you around.
Okay.
This is across our particular sites right here. This is on the street looking towards the Home Improvement Center. Just to give you an idea of what the parking is, this is behind the project, which is on this location right here, that particular building. Coming down the street, this is still Richardson side, and as we come around the corner, that's where I'm getting to that building right there.
Right.
This being off of off of Olive Street, being one building, building 2, 3, and then another building around the outside.
Okay.
And you can basically see there is no landscaping. These concrete or hardscape surfaces go right up to the building. This is looking down. This is at this particular corner right here. We're looking at this roll-up door that's right there, and then this 2 gable-end buildings, and then there's a lower building on the very corner. This being the very corner of the building, a little glass enclosure here. This was kind of an office area at one time for one use. Handelman Studios, their manufacturing is done in this particular part of the building. The other part of the building has had multiple uses in it. This is at this corner looking back this way. Give you an idea where the power poles are at and kind of the general character of the neighborhood. This is across this, looking at this corner here, looking back at the Home Improvement Center across the street. As I come across down to this corner, I'm looking down this way.
And you see this?
This being the little glass corner, and there's a couple of trees for Chris's purposes right there. The landscaping consists of 3 melaleucas, I think.
That's these here?
Yeah. And then this is facing down this street a little bit more to another part of the building, building number 6, which is this little corner right back into here. So the 3 areas of concentration for the project that we're looking at doing is fixing this facade of this particular building, this little area right there, and then changing these doors out that are on that side of the building.
Okay.
Now, this being the very end view looking straight at it there, I'll keep this off to the side so you can kind of see that one. And then as we come, this is our adjacent property. This is looking right down. There's separation between the stucco building and our Butler building, this little airspace that's in between the 2 things. The roofs drain off this way. This is where the homeless live. We got a trash enclosure that's right here that has 2 or 3 people in it most of the time, a loading dock, and another trash enclosure.
Okay.
So this particular building is roughly, finished floor is roughly about 3 feet above the flow line of the gutters into there. This was basically truck manufacturing is what the old uses were. They would drive the trucks in, they'd back them in, and then they would do whatever they're going to do on this concrete floor on the inside. So we're not proposing any changes to that or to the major part of the building, although we have lots of issues. But at the moment, the game plan is just dealing with this particular door. This particular rolling door, there used to be a rolling door into here. They took off that rolling door and did a roll-up door with a person door in that side. We want to change that out a little bit, get rid of the trash enclosure, move the trash enclosure from here over to the back side of the building so that we would have, not in the front, so we might actually have a place that we could do a little bit of landscaping in this little front section. ADA access will probably be in here depending on how the building is broken up. We don't really have tenants for it. The particular person that bought the place is going to use up most of it himself, and then we're going to change the orientation so this all becomes a spot. This will stay, this use will stay, this use will stay. So if I was to take a look at the two areas that we're really working on, these two doors, these are airport hangar type rolling doors that are roughly 14 feet in height, and they're probably, I think, 13 feet wide, but they don't really work. The issue also comes into play is that on this particular case of this particular thing, the actual track and the doors themselves are really in the right-of-way. Our building is back in here where the actual concrete slab is on our property, but the overhang and stuff actually protrudes into the right-of-way.
Okay.
So what we are proposing to do is to, this being our, how the building is really broken up right now, we have two entries on one side. This is how Steve Hanlon gets into his spot. There's another entrance on the back side over to here. There's an office set up with a ADA ramp coming into the very corner. And then this particular building was at one time one place with an entrance onto that side. So these are the proposed addresses or the building breakup down the future some way, depending on how we actually do that. For the most part, these were recessed bays that came back up and in, so the concrete is really at this point, and then that's a lower concrete area. We're in a floodplain, so we have some issues. But the game plan that the owner wants to do is change this door out, change this window out, and then change this particular section out. We're not proposing to do anything to the back except add the trash enclosures onto the one side. So the demo part would be taken out this little wall, and again, these are steel I-beams that are inside with just metal siding on both sides, same with this side. This being the Olive Street elevation, the way it exists today with the doors and the respective floor plan that goes with that. So these are the areas that we're working on. What the owner would like to do is still have the use of being able to back into the building or get into the building because of its industrial use. What he would like to do is to remove the sliding doors and come back and put a sectional glass door, as it were, that would be open for normal business hours that they would have, and then they could close it up at night. We still have a people door and a people door on this side, so to do our ADA compliance stuff there, we'd have a lift up here to get up our 3 feet roughly. This would all be a lower space. We have a couple of columns that are holding up the building right into there, so this would be cut out, but this is already open now. That would be open also from that elevation. So we wouldn't be doing anything with this or this at the moment. So that's a project right there, is that side. And then on the Gutierrez side, the very end of the building, this is the way it exists today. There's the trash enclosure, an opening, two existing windows, the metal siding, a block building, glass enclosure right here. Take out the ramp that's there, take out the trash enclosure that's on each side of that, relocate them to the other side. Still keep a loading dock, as it were, with the stair. This would be like an emergency exit or things. There's a access that comes in off of the street right now for deliveries The deliveries that they have right now would probably be once a month. It's not something that would be delivered all the time. The user is a rug kind of dealer. So it'd be once he stocked his warehouse, and that's what he would be doing. So this is mainly going to be storage of product and then some retail sales. So in this particular case, what that we're looking at doing is doing, again, a sectional roll-up door, glass door right there, a people door, keep the existing window, put an awning on the outside of it. This particular one we'd have to take out. There's two steel support columns that come up into there, so that kind of positioned it. The plan I had the other day, I centered it more, but we found that little steel beam right in the way, so we said, well, okay, let's slide it over a little bit. ADA compliance would be is that if in fact this got broken up, our ADA ramp would be over onto this side. We're hoping that by the removal of the trash enclosures from the front to the back, we can add a little bit of landscaping into this side and possibly do something into here until we're forced into doing ADA compliance on that side. The very back of the building, these are the sectional doors that are the roll-up doors that are there today. This is the existing plan, and then this would be the proposed plan with doing the trash enclosure. This is off of Richardson, which is basically a parking lot off of basically an alleyway, the way it's used right now. So down the road, we probably would change this, but for the purpose of today's meeting, what we're looking at doing is adding the trash enclosure and changing the doors on the two major entrances and into the building to add a little bit more light. We have a lot of technical issues to deal with in the building because the siding we can't match the siding. I haven't been able to find a supplier that makes the same kind of siding as here, and we have a lot of issues in some places. So, and it's metal on the outside of it, and down the road, I would like to change the siding out, but we have a lot of structural issues. So I can't even plaster it. I can't do anything with it except kind of plug in the bullet holes on the side of the building and some of the other rusted out parts.
Okay. All right. With that, I'd open it up for public comment. Seeing nobody lining up, I'll bring it back to the board. Questions? Paul?
Good presentation. Question on the trash enclosure.
Yes.
How tall is it, and what's the material of the gate?
Right now, everything that's in here, the sides of the things would be concrete block,
Okay.
probably plastered, and right now the gate is out of chain link only from the standpoint, if I put wood out there, it would be trashed in about 2 weeks. There's so much abuse there that I'm thinking that if I do something where I have a chain link type fence there, maybe, something else into there, I just don't see how I'm going to be able to keep a kind of a wood gate or something that's more we would use in other parts of the town to keep it on.
Okay.
I mean, my feeling is that if I make it too nice, 2 weeks ago we had a bike storage out here in front, and it wasn't bolted down. It's gone now. I mean, it's 16 feet long. It just up and disappeared. I don't know where it went. So I'm kind of thinking that from the standpoint of what we're looking at here, we're not really sure from the standpoint of whether it's going to be a dumpster or if we've gone totally to the trash containers as a standard thing within the city. So,
Okay.
That's it.
Thanks. Dawn?
Do you have a spec for the proposed roll-up glass doors?
I do, actually. It's, yes, I have that with me. Let me run back and get my
Okay.
briefcase. It's got that. I hope that I put it stuck in there.
ADA now wants accessibility inside your trash enclosure. Doug,
Are you
What's that?
kidding?
that's a comment
Oh
that
my gosh.
ADA now is requiring handicap accessibility to the insides of trash enclosures. Just FYI.
Yeah, this, I hear what you're saying. And this entire thing is asphalt out here. I mean, I could come in from the side if I'm trying to figure out how I'm going to get to it from here.
No, I just wanted to warn you about that. It just came up for me on a project.
You have to call it a reconfiguration of an existing trash enclosure.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it can't be. You can't call it that because you're relocating it.
Yeah, and the issue is how many times do I have to put it inside of the building? Right now, it's an open building. These particular guys are at a lower level than this level. So this whole thing is hollowed out, and this is at the same level with them, but they have their trash enclosure right inside. I mean, they have a dumpster there because of all the metal work that goes on. So I'm thinking, well, okay, if I put this on, originally the owners wanted to put it down the side. And I said, well, that's really nice. I could probably get it into there, but I'd have a lot of easement issues to deal with. And so I said, well, right now, this is the only place I could figure out if I want to move it from the front. So what the owner was proposing was this kind of a sectional door that is basically a glass door and has that thing, and it would be in that color probably.
Dark brown.
Well, we were trying to figure out anything that we could do because of the amount of glass and be able to lift up the door. So if I did it out of wood or other material like that, I would still have the issue that the opening that I have, well, not on this one's only 12 feet, but the other one is 20 feet.
Yeah, I was just like, the reason I was asking because those doors are extremely high. They're really tall. So, and this one is for a 6'10".
The people said that they could do it. They didn't have any issues with it.
How tall is that?
It's 14
Heather?
feet. This one right here is 8 feet. The other
Yeah,
one,
it's the other ones I'm talking
yeah,
about.
They do firehouses.
yeah.
Yeah.
So
Okay. I
this,
just wanted to see that.
the only reason for that is that the first 3 feet is floor, and then it comes back up into there, and depending on how much they have, but what they were trying to do is add enough light to get back inside of the
Right.
building. They do have skylights on the roof now, and he said that generally speaking is that probably on a typical day these would be all the way up, and they would just lower them down at night.
So you're proposing an awning in front of
Yes.
those two, and then is there any reason why you're keeping, or are you?
No.
Looks like you're keeping that. You're getting rid
No,
of that, right?
all that's gone.
Okay,
and
that's
what
the
I-
awning. That's the awning I'm seeing.
Yeah,
Okay,
that's the
good.
awning that you're seeing because that's the west elevation.
Okay.
And this little, what I did is, in order to capture the metal that was on the outside of it, I plastered a little element up and around to catch the edge. This is about probably 2 inches. That is proud of that
Okay.
siding, about 2 inches, just to give it. And then I was trying to do is get this back in a way so you can kind of see from the recess. That door has to swing out, and it cannot exceed over the property line. So that was recessed back in, and I tried to get that back in farther. And the owner wanted to keep it out fairly close because he has to do another gate on the inside.
Okay. That's it. No more
Okay,
questions.
Chris?
I guess I'm wondering, as far as the Olive Street facade, what are the odds of getting any trees or landscaping along that
Here's our
area?
picture of Ollie Street. It's solid concrete right now.
Right.
And I would think that we could probably do something with that, but just looking at the use of
Right.
that,
Yeah, I go by that area a lot, and that whole block is just so stark. There's
Yeah.
no vegetation at all.
and I was thinking of maybe doing some kind of a pocket or something like that. The issue is the place that would be the most logical spot to plant a tree or something is right underneath the power lines.
Right.
So
Well, I mean, there could be a smaller tree even, something
Yeah.
that doesn't get too high. So,
anything I could get into there
Yeah.
would be a plus.
okay, yeah, that's the way I'm feeling about it. So
Yeah.
I just wanted to raise that question.
Yeah, as we come around to this side, there is some spaces in there that allow for landscaping into
Okay.
there. And unfortunately, it's mostly in the parkway, and I know how you really don't want to see, we can put some things there.
Right.
But just because of the use of the area,
Okay, that's it for
there might be
questions.
some issues there.
Thanks. Yeah, Doug, first thing, I have to say that I like the way that you presented this. with the existing and the proposed and the elevations
easier
and
to
the
see.
plan.
Yeah.
You just see everything right away. I mean, generally, I think that all of the efforts that you're doing are for the betterment, and they are going. I think they'll go well. I mean, for here with the ADA, I'm not sure what sizes there would be, but I would propose that if you couldn't make instead of chain link, I would prefer that you made those doors out of steel, and even if they were porous, that it would be steel. So that would be one thought if you consider. The other is that. Oh yeah.
You stole my comment.
Sorry.
That's fine.
Okay. How many questions? Okay, let me back up.
No, go back.
I'm gonna back up.
Okay, we erase.
Yeah,
We'll
back
do a
up.
do-over. Okay.
Questions. Not sure what it is that caused this, but I would question as to why you ended your canopies short of the elements that are right behind it, like here.
I was trying to get it
Here.
to die into
Here and
the
here.
appearance of the column, so that the supports of this, the bars would go back in and tie into this rather than tying it into the metal.
Correct.
So that was kind of the thought process with that.
Okay. I'll go into comments after that. But that's one question. Let's see. And did you have any? I saw on that photograph that you have there that there's a vent up here somewhere. Does
Yeah.
that come out then?
Well,
And then it gets all.
I probably didn't show it.
Yeah.
On the other elevation on this side, there's a vent that's right there.
Yeah.
That's right there also.
Okay.
And that was basically like a whole house fan vent. That's how they cooled the inside
Right.
of the building down.
So that will stay.
That's already there.
Yeah. But the other one that's on the other elevation, will that stay?
That would also stay also.
Okay. All right. So we'd like to get that drawn on it because it's kind of offset
Yeah.
and stuff like that. Did you give any thought at all to your security lighting or your signage lighting, or is that something that's to come?
I thought I was pushing the envelope with just the doors. They have lighting right now. There's light that's right there. There's a couple of lights that are
Yeah.
on the outside that are absolutely the ugliest possible lights
Okay.
that could be on there.
We could let you come back with
Yeah.
what your preferred thoughts would be, and then of course. Okay. So I'm good to go into
Okay.
to comments. So I'm going to come on to Paul comments.
I think it's ready for project design approval and return to consent for final. The one minor comment I had is having to do about your ADA ramp along Gutierrez Street in the plan, depending on how this would work and that door swing. But that's something you'll figure out even if they
Yeah.
have to do that.
Okay.
That's it.
John,
I agree with Paul.
Chris.
My award-winning building.
Can we turn a page? A4. I was just going to, and you recognize this also, but the opportunity for landscaping here is great. So I was just going to reiterate that you have a lot of
Yes.
space in here, and if it's possible to come down into this zone also. I know it's not really in the scope right now, but it'd be a huge improvement to add a lot of green in there. Excuse me.
That was the original idea, was to take the stuff that's here,
Right.
put it into the back or put it onto the side so that I could actually make this look nicer on that one side. There's a small little 42-inch high wall. There's a little bit of landscaping in the parking lot right here. There's a wall that's right here and a kind of a dead space right there. So the idea was to come back in and landscape this however I can to get something into that side. So I was hedging my bets down the road outside of Paul brought up a good point with that door swing, is that this would take up the ramp area that I needed, and I would have to relocate this ramp out to the front because this is going down. This would be my landing right there.
Okay.
So I don't have a lot of options. This particular building is 1.5 feet lower than this building.
Okay. Well, we'll just encourage in general to
Yeah.
as much green as we can. And again, as we just discussed, around the corner here too, if you have
Right.
any opportunities at all, because it's so stark,
Yeah.
that would be helpful. That's all I had, though. Comments.
Okay. Likewise, I think everything that you're doing is positive. But I think that there is some key things that I would like to see, and I'd really want you to consider that these canopies come over the edge, because remember that you're going to have to deal with this condition here anyway. So it would be better that you deal with one condition all the way down, and the brace for this could be on the center of that column, even though the edge comes over here.
Yeah.
So I think it's going to read better that it covers. This one covers the whole opening. That's a much better detail to do. I think that the key things that will make this simple warehouse type building work well for you is the colors. What is the color of your canopy? If this is fabric, what's the color of that? What are you repainting this to be? Okay. What is your lighting fixture looks like, so that it stays within this kind of warehousey kind of look. But and then how you match that up with the door color, that sort of thing. But generally, all your massing, everything that you're doing is good. It's going to a great place. I don't know if you want to look at these two, if they're different, and is that a purposeful thing? Is it not?
This is gone.
Okay.
That's what I'm taking out.
Oh, yeah, that's right. That's
So
gone.
this-
So this is the only new one.
Yes,
This is the only
right.
new one. Okay. So those are the key things, really. I think that what's going to really make it is little details like that,
Okay.
the color, lighting, that sort of thing. But I think generally everything that you've done planning-wise and is working. So
One question for the board is that in the past, most of the stuff I've done on State Street, the canopies are all open from the side. Is that the general kind of thought? One of the canopies here is actually closed in onto the side, and I was thinking that they were open.
Are yours canvas?
I'm making that assumption right now. Yeah.
Open.
open would be
Okay.
preferred
Okay.
in that scenario. Yeah.
If you don't
And
mind
then-
me speaking for you.
No,
And everybody
that's
else.
fine. That's fine.
I knew that answer.
I like a strong woman. Okay, that's great, Dawn. Maybe you want to make a motion.
I'll make a motion.
Okay.
For project design approval, for the project to come back for final and consent with final ADA compliance, including the final resting place for the ramp, details of the trash enclosure, awning, doors, etc. I don't think we need to list them all, Gloria, but just to come back with all finishes and details.
Color.
Okay, the one question on the ramp is that we're not going to know that until our tenant is for that space. So that's going to have to be a future.
Oh, it's not.
No, the
Part
one
of
that's on, the one on Gutierrez Street, I'm just, in my mind, figuring out that right now that space, the ADA compliance will be coming in from the front off of Olive Street, not from Gutierrez. The Gutierrez one is just an exit, emergency exit.
So you're doing your ADA compliance in a different way,
Yeah,
different upgrades.
off to the front, yeah.
My point to him was just to file it away that don't place that one door that prevents you from having an outswing and the landing
right.
coming
Okay,
up.
so Gloria, scratch everything about coming back with ADA compliance information because it doesn't pertain to us.
Yeah, at this point in time.
Just come back with details and colors and finishes to consent
Lighting fixtures.
Yeah,
and lighting fixtures.
yeah, because I have to take, there's a multiple lighting fixtures there. They're huge industrial strength lights.
Right.
So I will remove those if I can.
Okay, great. So we have a second?
I'll second that.
Paul, second. Under discussion, anything?
Under discussion to
Landscaping?
Okay, add landscaping.
Yeah,
Forgot
add-
about Chris.
add as much green as possible, basically, and examine the possibility of incorporating street trees along Olive Street.
Okay. So I have to find something it's not too tall.
You might talk to Parks and Rec. They may have a
They will have lots of.
tree that's already called
Yeah.
out for that block. So
Okay.
if that works, that'd be good.
Okay, thanks, Chris. Okay, all those in favor of the motion, please say aye. Aye. Against, that motion carries. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Doug. So is that coming back to consent? Yes. Okay. Okay. Okay, with that, we're up to the third item of the evening, 900 Calle de los Amigos.
We're only 5 minutes behind. Good job.
Oh, okay, let's keep it going. I wasn't even looking at the time.
This project was here, so I think that unless I look at and review the last plans, I have to abstain, even though we'd still have a quorum, because I can still be present. So maybe I could just look at the plans, Tony. Off to the side.
Okay, so I'll just read the minutes here. Okay, continued indefinitely to the full board with the following comments. Work with neighbors to the north regarding final landscape placement. Provide an exterior lighting plan and fixture cut sheets. Provide a color and materials board and final schedule. Provide material details for site retaining walls. Study the retaining wall fence and berm landscape of the Mesa Verde parking lot area. The wood fence is not needed. Screen with landscaping. Only one trailhead entrance off Torino Drive is encouraged. Study the entry landscape and sign details. Incorporate arborist recommendations and identify locations on the landscape plans. Step back retaining walls adjacent to pedestrian sidewalks to provide planting pockets. That's it. State your name for the record and just...
My name is Justin Van Mullum. I'm with On Design Architects. One of the things we have some civil plans, but we have been working with our arborist to kind of cut those walls up. That's one of the things is trying to create planter pockets, and we think that we should come back with a new design because we had a really successful meeting today with our certified arborist, and we think we can create more planter pockets and reduce some of the retaining wall heights without impacting oaks. So we'd like to table the civil plans, which is what we were originally here for, but I also have the architectural plans for just the residential units, the 40 residential units. So I'd like to go through some of those plans. I've got colors and I've got lighting. So one of the things the board asked is that we come back and kind of do an in progress. So I kind of would like to do that and just focus on the residential, and then I would come back with the civil, the landscape, and the commercial buildings. So
you come back with civil, that will, landscape will come back with that portion and go and resolve the problem.
okay. So just to refresh the board, we've got some units over here. The Homes of the North, or Sende Verde North. We've got over here is the Rutherford. We have had a meeting with the neighbor regarding landscaping, and we know what their goals are. We've made some changes, some of the things that they had requested. So, and we're still working on landscaping in this area with them currently. I had a meeting with them just today, so we're just trying to hammer out exactly what their goals are so we're all on the same page and we can create a plan that works for the community. We have some infill over here and as well over here, some in this area here, here, and here. So those are the residential units. I now have trying to reduce this into kind of a half set of plans that only really focus on the residential. So here are the residential units with their numbers, and then we have enlarged site plans for all the residential units, so you have a little bit more information. What we're kind of working on right now with the retaining walls is trying to step some of these to get more planter opportunities, and that's what we've been doing. So I think we'll be successful. We have to also work with the planning department to make sure that our changes are within the substantial conformity determination. So the site plans have not changed for any of these residential units since your last review. What we have done is we've worked on the elevations, and we started to fine-tune the elevations. So if we can go to, this is just showing that we meet solar for our interior property lines. These are the units that are part of this plan, and we've done a roof plan showing where our skylights are, where our vents are located. We have updated the color plans. We've called out the materials. Let's see, to be consistent with what's on the site currently, we're going with plaster. All the units will be plaster, using Milligard aluminum windows to match the rest of the campus. The Certainty, and you can kind of see some. This is what's the existing materials. This is the stucco. This is the trim, and then we have the roof material. So here are some of the other colors. What we tried to do is have a palette that is warm, that will kind of blend in wherever it happens. And as we start to remodel some of these other units, as we start to remodel some of the other units, there we go, it was off, we will start to blend more colors into the campus. Right now the campus is all one color, all the same trim and the same stucco. And so the idea is that let's make it look more like a neighborhood, all one story, of course. So we have a color plan that shows the new buildings and what we're planning for those new buildings. See, these elevations haven't changed. We've just keyed in details now. The roof plans are all new, showing where our venting is and our skylights. Every unit has a skylight in the kitchen and a skylight in the living room, which is consistent with the remodels that have been happening on campus for the last couple of years. So, other units, you can see this is Unit 40. It only happens one time. This is Unit 25. It happens one time. But we're trying to stay consistent with what else is happening on campus. We don't want to we started with details that were very craftsman in style. The residents wanted something that blended in because originally we had most of our project were up on the Rutherford area, but then they moved more on the infill, as you can see. And so when we put a new building in, we want it to blend. We don't want it to feel any newer than any of the other buildings. So materials and detailing has to be at least similar to what's existing on campus. And I have some photographs just to remind you what some of those details are. I think this is a good example. It's a little different depending on the zone because It was developed in the 60s, the 70s, and then the 80s. But you can see here's a remodel that's happened. You've got some columns but here's some existing more 60s style architecture. You've got some trellises and so it gives you an idea of what is existing. It's stucco. The eaves are stuccoed. You have some trim around the windows, but it's relatively thin. Some of the windows go all the way down to the slab. Some of with a wood piece. Some of them don't. It just really depends on where you're at on campus. Oops, you've seen that one. But this gives you an idea of like some of the entrances that are existing, and so we want to blend with what's there, and we don't want to be overly detailed. So let's continue with it. This is something I showed last time, but just for Don to see that this is some of the buildings that we have on campus that we're proposing, and this was a direct response from some request of making some changes last time, and we're just giving an idea of colors and massing on some of the buildings. So this is our triplex. This is our only triplex building. There's only one, and it just gives you an idea. We've tried to break up the massing and windows. Let's see. Roof plan showing the venting and the skylights. We are going to go with, instead of using the solar tubes with the acrylic domes, Velux has come up with one that has a flat, it's kind of square, and it's completely flat. And so we're going to go with that as our main solar tube for bathrooms and such. Here's our color plan showing the campus layout for color with our different, trying to break things up the best we could with our schemes, our color schemes. Color. Like this is the existing, then A, B, and C, just kind of going around. We didn't want things to be too intense with the colors. We started with some very bright colors that might have had too much pop, blending them in with the existing campus. Because we can't paint all 250 some odd units at the same time. It's going to be a process. But we want to have a master plan, and that's why we've got colors that we feel that blend in. And the colors that we chose are Sherwin-Williams, and most of them are from the arts and crafts palette that was originally created in the 1900s. You'll see it a lot in the Aladdin bungalow type books, the ones that were kit homes. So these were the colors that were used for the original bungalows for the most part. Going into details, instead of doing the stucco eaves, we felt that we could do a TNG exposed eave. We are not high fire. We are close to the high fire area, but we are not high fire. So we're opening the eaves up, and let's see, we've got gutters and downspouts. We're using the trim piece will be the thicker piece that's relatively new, that's made by Hardy. I think it's...
They're 5/8.
Yeah.
It's 5 quarters?
5 quarters. The Artisan, the Hardy Artisan. It's a nice thick piece that we can use and nail right in with finish nailing, and then stucco right to it. And then we'll continue the stucco down. We'll use a break and weave screed break, and then continue the stucco down into the finished grade. And that's to look more like the existing homes. We have some chimney cap details, and some details on the Turncraft product, which is a nice way to hide connections for a larger patio enclosure. So, then we have our lighting cut sheets. So what we've kind of done is we've created, there's three different types of lighting that we'd have for the residential. One is this pack light that we'd hide underneath the eaves, and it would only be to illuminate the building number. That's one of our requirements from the fire department, and that will only happen in one place on the building. So it's an LED light that is hidden up on the eave. And then we have these more craftsman style or arts and crafts style lighting fixtures, and you can get a better idea of what they look like. We're thinking going back and forth with the aged bronze and the matte bronze, and then but all of the glass will be this honey swirl type glass like is photographed here that has a much more subdued light. It's very, very soft. So the lights on the elevations, this would be for a door, and then on the porches, when we have an enclosed porch, a covered porch, we'd also have a light that would hang down from that enclosed porch. And the idea is that this would have a very, like an LED light that you can see that has an option for, and it would be a very low wattage. It would be on all the time during the night. And so it's kind of a safety thing. And then the porch lights or the door lights they'd be operable still to meet Title 24 though. So that basically sums up the residential portion of what we've been working on. If there's any questions, or sorry.
We'll come to questions. Okay, with that, I'd like to open it up for public comment. We have 3 speaker slips here. Ruth Georgie, followed by Heidi Hiker. Sorry. And then the last is Jermaine Chastain.
Actually, if you can sit over here with this.
So Ruth first. That's fine.
Good afternoon. My name is Ruth Georgi, and I live up adjacent to the Rutherford parcel, which is the section up here, the open field that is going to be developed. And I am the closest neighbor. So some of my comments today, I understand since we're not discussing the landscaping, are moot. We did meet with Justin one time on the property, discussed a few of our goals. I haven't had a chance to meet personally with anybody else about it. I'm looking forward to that because I hope to maintain the views that I currently have and then perhaps enhance them as Ms. Ayers of the Tynan Group said we probably would be able to do. I'm not that well versed in the whole process of everything that has to be done in the order in which they are, but one of my concerns at this time is going back through where there was a unit here that was found the setbacks were denied. Basically, it was unit 6-7 combo, so now it's just unit 7 with unit 6 moving someplace else on the interior of the thing. I'm thrilled with the setback decision, but that unit now has gotten to be larger than the others. It proportionately doesn't seem to be in compliance with the rest of the buildings that are being put on there. So that's just a little concern. It just looks like one of our things with the moving it away from the street, getting the setback to where it would be for the zoning was so that the building did not look intrusive as you first came up the street and towards our entrance gates. That would be one concern of mine. I don't know if this is the appropriate place to bring it up or not, but I'm bringing it up just in case. The retaining walls and the fencing, I guess that's going on with the landscaping, so that will come up at a later meeting. And a couple of the buildings, when we met with Justin, we said we would be agreeable to some of the buildings being lowered a little bit more. And if that does come up for a question, we did, as a group with the neighbors, approve the lowering of units 12 and 13 up here, a little bit lower. And I'm not sure how much the parking lot got adjusted. 3 feet. That was something else that we discussed, and our goal in that is because we thought if it was a little bit deeper than currently on the plans that we had before, it would allow for a little more landscaping to kind of buffer that, so it wasn't as noticeable from the street. So if that is coming up, that was something that we had discussed also. But we also did discuss the Unit 7, and that we would encourage and hope that that could also be lowered as 13 and 14, or 12 and 13 were, just to kind of, so it, again, doesn't look as noticeable from the street as you're approaching. Those are my comments. I'm looking forward to the landscape. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Heike? Okay. Jermaine Chastain?
Hi, I'm Jermaine Chastain, and I'm the second closest neighbor to the Rutherford parcel. And really the only thing I heard here today that raised a little bit of a concern is the pendant light that hangs that I heard you mention that would be on all night. And I just would like to know a little bit more about that lighting, because especially on the Rutherford property and as it relates to, you know, the open space area there and, you know, what's been thrown about as a wildlife corridor or whatnot, just because we're an unlighted community. And, you know, that's always been kind of one of our concerns, is the light pollution from the development and the, you know, institutional setting over there. So I'd just like for, you know, with your expertise, for you guys to really, you know, take a look at that. You know, anytime I hear that a light, I mean, I understand that, you know, for safety reasons, some things have to be done, but, you know, if there could be some balance to make sure to, you know, respect the setting and the, you know, existing neighborhood, that would be really, really great. So that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, then close public comment, bring it back to the board for questions. Board?
Actually, can you turn to sheet A, 1.16? 16, if it exists.
1.16.
1.16. It had the unit 7 on the. I looked at these drawings over here, and I wanted to ask you: has there been a change in the floor plan?
No. Oh,
that was just.
Not in the floor plan has changed slightly, but the size and the perimeter walls have not changed at all.
And previously, you were asking for a modification to encroach. I don't know if it was 5 feet, and then you divided this into 2 units, and then that was denied. So now you're back.
We were at 20 feet before, and now we're at 35 feet.
Okay.
We had 2 units there, and now we're down to 1 unit in that same location.
So the project design approval was for 20, what?
No, 35.
We relocated one of the units. But there was a duplex that was in this area.
But then
right
since design approval, Unit 7 got larger.
No, it did not.
Oh,
it hasn't changed.
Okay,
That was
it hasn't changed.
No.
Hasn't changed at all. Exterior lighting for these units, can you show me, either on this plan or on the lighting plan, where that pendant light was going to be? Because it's kind of like over the covered porches.
Right.
And did you have that design style for these units?
So it would be covered. And the idea is that we were trying to avoid having residents leave the porch lights on, which it would be a much brighter light that we'd need for code. This would be just a light that would illuminate just enough right in this area.
So there'd be one in this case and one over
right
here.
So it'd be so they'd be completely. We'd only do it in an area where it was completely covered, so there'd be no issue. So yeah, all in these areas.
Okay. And then last question: there was a retaining wall here and back here. What were the heights of these retaining walls? And then there was landscaping back at this point.
And what we were trying to do, I think it was a 2.5 foot retaining wall in this area right here. But what we're trying to do is lower this pad by 3 feet. So if we push the pad down, this building will not be as visible for the neighbors in this location here. There would be less of a pad to change and in between these two. And then we need a little extra dirt, so it would be helpful with reducing export. But this, once again, all needs to be approved by the planning department and making sure that it's substantially conforming to our approval. So I can show you these plans
Didn't you have a site section through that parking lot area at one time, showing the bushes above the retaining
Yes.
wall, and what happened to that section? Maybe that would
I think
answer the question.
What we're trying to do, when I met with the neighbors on site, what we're trying to do is we're going to move this forward slightly by 3 feet. That would hide, if there was, say, a big van parked here, and you drove up, you would be able to see it. That was one of their concerns. So by pushing it forward slightly, we don't need as much of a wall that's happening. What we can do is plant this area out. And so our plan is to aggressively plant this area out, so there's really no chance for the larger vehicles to be seen.
But that wall's 3 to 5 feet?
No, we're going to do a berm instead, a berm right in this area here. So we'd pile up the dirt. We wouldn't have a retaining wall.
Oh.
And we'd just pile up dirt and then plant on top of it.
Okay.
And then one last question. You said that the windows were going to match the existing original windows, which were going to be Milgard aluminum.
Yeah, the Milgard aluminum windows are what's being used on campus right now for all of the remodels.
Because it seemed like there were some white vinyl ones in those
Yeah,
photographs.
and we don't want to use the white vinyl because it's harder to get the colors to work with the white vinyl, and so they did that on a couple of the buildings and they felt like it wasn't successful. So
I just wanted to make sure that was
the white vinyl has stopped.
Thanks.
So,
Yeah, I got some questions on the detailing because if you look at all of the elevations, Justin, there were almost every single detail of the porch is different. There's, like this one, for instance, has a base integrated almost in plane with where it starts to taper. This one has...
and the taper does...
This one has one that's a little different, and then these are narrower.
And that product is the Turncraft product.
I saw that, but...
And then so they have different products. So it would be on the same 4x4. You would have a whatever that size is, and you'd cut it down, and so there are variations with that. So we can kind of break it up. I could get details for each style of Turncraft. I think that sounds like what you're asking
because
for.
like that one doesn't even have a base, and it's got a really deep cap. This one is similar to the other one.
We tried to break it up so they're not.
That one's got a strange, really tall base, and then there's a line where you're showing on your detail that this is a redwood beam, which I've seen in some of the units, but this is that white kind of painted finish, and then this detail actually that's a plaster cap on your detail. So I just, I guess I'm not really liking some of the in fact, let's just look at this. Here's the base detail at some of the locations, it looks like, but then, right, where you're doing a plaster base.
Right.
I've never been really fond of this, but I suppose if that's what you're proposing, I just need, like this, here's that detail I was looking at. I was wondering what that was, because you're showing this in some cases as a redwood beam. In fact, it's shown there. But then what's this piece?
It's another piece of redwood that just decorative.
Okay, and that's stained redwood.
It would be painted out.
Huh?
It'd be painted, not stained.
Okay, because the details on the houses, I thought that, I was trying to figure out where you were picking redwood and then this Turncraft, because some of the details on the posts had just stained redwood and painted columns. But now you're saying that you want this to be painted.
Yes. So if it's called out as stained anywhere, we missed that.
Well, no, it wasn't. I just saw it on some of the other details. I guess there were so many different conditions that I thought that even though we're dealing with so many residential units, we have to treat them all with the same respect. And each one has to be detailed. If you're proposing a different detail, I think that we just need to make it clear what you're proposing, and then I can comment on it. Because right now the details are so small, it's without seeing it, I can't really comment on it. Because I think that's really important.
Just so-
that'll be into comments. I'm getting kind of into comments, and I apologize. So,
Okay.
my main comment was, or question was about why there weren't a lot of details, and then
Specifically on the columns, right?
right,
Column
and
and
then
column counts.
I also was wondering. I'll leave it for. It's kind of a question comment. I'll wait. I'll save it.
Okay. Chris?
Just one question. Back to the Rutherford section. You mentioned that, what was it, number 12, was that lowered?
12 and 13, we've been working with the civil engineer to see what the impacts would be for lowering the pad. We think we have a successful design. The planning department still needs to approve that to make sure this, but it's something that the neighbors had talked to us about, and we could use the extra dirt because we're importing dirt now. So it seemed that if we did that, we could reduce. We have this cart path, and we had a 4-foot retaining wall that was right next to the cart path. If we could reduce that, it would make it feel a little bit more inviting, because I think that's going to be a major thoroughfare if we make it nice. But if we don't, then the carts are going to go on the street, and we're trying to avoid that.
Okay. So then my question was, does the parking lot also get lowered, or is that remaining as it
No,
was?
the parking lot would remain.
Okay.
This had I think it was a 10% driveway, and so that 10% driveway would just be reduced to maybe 8 or 5.
Okay. That's it for questions for me.
Okay, thanks. Justin, just to go over again, these light fixtures that are in the entries here that are up underneath the eaves, they essentially, you can't see the source of the light and it just shines down,
And
right?
we're
That's
talking
all it is.
we're talking like maybe 3-watt LED light
Right.
or less.
Right.
It's just a very small, and kind of give it just a lit illumination, and that way we're just trying to avoid having the 60-watt porch light on,
Right.
and having it left on all night by the residents.
Right. Okay. And in the next, when you come back with the landscaping and the grading, we'll see more development of the berm and that
Yes,
sort of thing.
absolutely.
With that solution that you're doing there. Okay. Let's look at again. You talked about the dome skylights that they have now. You're going to go to more of a flat one, and I was looking at this detail here, and you don't give a height here as to what this finish is height-wise off of this, and we. What our concern is. We want this to be as
Low
low a
profile.
profile as is absolutely possible. So,
You
if
prefer
there's
the deck mount as opposed to the curb.
if there's anything that you could do to also give you the waterproofing that you need here on the kind of slope, if you have any kind of cant here, but would keep that tight as possible, that's what we'd like you to try and achieve if you can do that, right? So. On the point that Dawn was making, I think that really the architecture of all of the units are very simple massing-wise. You would agree that they're very, very simple. The only distinction, as Dawn was pointing out, are these variations in the columns. So it does become a point where we really want to pay attention to that one little aspect. And so that's really important. One of the things that I was looking at, for instance, is that you have a drawing of this here, and then you have a detail of that here, but that drawing does not seem to match this detail. Because if you look at the proportion here to there, that does not exist here. So you could even be feeling that what you have is more than you have already, and you need to go and make sure that those details are matching up with what your vision really wants to be. And I think that's what Dawn is after too, is just to make sure that you're on that page where
attendance.
Yeah, your vision is with your details. And so, she's picking up these things, and I'm picking up these little things that point to you needing to do that kind of work, and then come back to us, and then maybe show us the different columns that you have and how they all kind of do the job for you in this project. And really, that's all I have. I mean, and I thank you for the in-progress work, the colors, and I'm in questions.
Well, you do.
So
your
I'm
comments.
back to, sorry. So Paul, for comments.
Are you proposing any site or campus lighting?
Yes, there is a full campus lighting plan. We're planning on.
But we haven't discussed that today.
No, it's been conceptually approved. No, we haven't discussed it today because
Okay.
we're only talking about anything that's connected to the residential
To the
buildings.
physical
and-
buildings.
and nothing past that.
And we didn't talk about landscaping today. That's another time.
Right.
Perfect. My only comment is, I like the direction you're going. The lighting I'm not too concerned with because it is low voltage. And we haven't talked about the campus lighting and the landscaping and all those issues we haven't addressed. So I think you're going down the right road. I think they're hammering on you correctly in the sense that we need to look at each of these details per design package with a little more detail, but you're going to be coming back to discuss these other issues, so you're doing fine.
Thanks. Dawn?
I think you kind of covered my concern along with the comments that I already made, and I think it's going to be a nice project, and I appreciate the work you've done so far. I just think it's just an issue of resolving those porch details and making sure that we're on the same page and can see each one so we can comment on them. I've never been a real big fan of this detail, but if you have a way of showing us how great it's going to look, then I'm open to that. And I noticed that you're putting trim on all the units, but I noticed on some of the existing units there wasn't trim at all. Are you adding trim to all of the units?
No,
Because you have trim on all the units that you have a trim color specified for all the units. So
all the new units will have trim.
okay.
Some of the existing units do, some of the existing units do not. But for the most part, they do have some type of trim around the windows.
Okay. Just make sure that's really clear which ones on your plans, which ones you're adding trim and which ones you're not.
Okay.
That's otherwise it's gonna be a nice project.
Chris?
I don't have much to add considering we're not looking at the landscaping, but I'm looking at a couple of these schemes, the color schemes, and I'm especially C and A, and wondering if maybe get some input from the architects on the board here. But the stucco color on those two being fairly dark, and that may.
You should see where we came from.
Yeah.
These are subdued.
Okay.
C and A.
And-
A whole building that dark color may appear heavy. I guess that's what I'm getting at.
That wasn't my favorite color anyway. But there is that one, but
In the sunlight, when you look at these in the sunlight, of course they're different colors, and so we've studied them. We had different colors, and then you bring them out in the sunlight, and they completely change. And we just wanted to have enough of something different because we want to have a large palette of colors. And so every once in a while, we call this our 10%. We would never use this more than 10%. It's kind of just enough like a neighborhood where you get this one dark house and it breaks
Yeah. I can
breaks the
see where you're going with
homogenized look up.
Right, so it's not all, basically the same. That was just the only thing. I've been staring at these for a while since there's no landscaping. Just sort of jumped out at me.
Okay. And likewise, I appreciate you bringing in all the colors for us, this in-progress review. Lets us do exactly what we did today, is just point out the things that we will be focusing on when you come back, and it gives you a heads up. I think it's all going in a good direction. When you do come back with the landscaping, I just give you some thoughts that I had in my mind when I'm looking at all of those photographs of the existing landscaping, is that, and I don't know if it's exactly that way, but I get the impression that there is a lot of landscape up against people's buildings, up against the walls of the buildings. And if that continues in that way, that's just fine, because the buildings are pretty simple, so the landscape kind of adds to it. As we can see in your colored perspectives, it kind of helps the building along. What I'd like to know is if you consciously move away from that because of maintenance issues and like sprinkling and stuff like that against buildings, then we'd want to be careful that we're not losing some nice landscaping character against the buildings and stuff. But
We're going away from, we have recycled water, and we're trying to go only to drip systems. And one of the big advantages of having recycled water is that we can have a lot of lush landscaping. So that'll continue to be the plan.
Okay, great. Okay, I'm good for a motion.
I'll make a motion, and this is for an indefinite continuance back to full board with the following comments. The first is going to be carrying over items that were from the previous meeting, and I'll read through them. Number 1 is to work with the neighbors to the north regarding final landscape placement. Carry forward item number 4, which is study the retaining wall, fence, and berm landscaping of the Mesa Verde parking area. The wood fence is not needed, screening with landscaping. Carry forward number 5, which is only one trailhead. Entrance off of Torino Drive is encouraged. Study entry landscaping, ... Item 6, incorporate arborist recommendations and identify locations. Item 7, which is step back retaining walls adjacent to pedestrian sidewalks to provide planting pockets. Also, 2 new items would be, 1 is to provide a site campus lighting plan with cut sheets of the fixtures, and provide photometrics with the foot candles if there's a concern, or consider bringing foot candle photometric studies. And item 2 for new would be study the porch detailing and provide additional information for the architectural character.
Thanks, Paul. Do we have a second? Second by Dawn. Under discussion? No? All those in favor of the motion, please say aye. Aye. Against? That motion carries. Thanks very much. Okay, that brings us to item number 4, 2550 Treasure Drive. Running behind. Hey, how are you doing?
Good, how are you?
All right.
It's not hot anymore. It was the hot seat.
Hopefully it's cooled down a little bit here.
When was that?
Last project, all that landscaping we just discussed.
They must have a landscape architect.
Okay, while we set up, I'll just read the motion. Back to full board. Comply with the conditions in PC Resolution 10-11. Study the proportions of the entry window divided lights. Study the spa entry opening. Provide definition of the entry tower from the elevation shaft extension above the roof. Study shape and detailing of the kitchen vent chimney feature to minimize its size. Study the mechanical well height and its relationship to landscape and views. Study the landscape screening. Consider stepping the wall or provide a planter in front. Study lowering the trash enclosure wall. Study the 4 square tile on chimneys. Windowsills and headers for authentic detail and proportion. The paving details and layout, and the balance of paving throughout the project. Lots of studies there. Yeah. Okay,
I'll be present but abstaining.
Okay. If you state your name for the record and just proceed with your presentation.
My name's Todd Kilburn with Kilburn Architects. And thanks for having us. First off, I think you'll recall we've been here several times. This is possibly our 4th time, and I think each meeting has gone well and has helped advance the design. Last meeting we had the design pretty well developed, and you came back with some very specific items to look at. So I just want to walk through each one step by step and let you know our thought process and what we've done to revise or change the design. So the first thing, we should turn to sheet A2.2. And this is to study the proportions of the entry window divided lights. And the issue at the time, and it's this area at the entry, I think we just had a little too many divisions of the lights on the side lights and additional divisions at the arch. So what we've done is just gone full height glass with no further division, and similarly with the arch window, just did a straight all open glass without dividing it any further. And we think that simplified it and had better proportions.
Okay.
The next item is to study the spa opening, the spa entry opening, and that's at building D on sheet 8.1. Now, as you'll recall, we're also, as part of this project, remodeling an existing building where some of the existing uses are being moved to our new life center. So we're coming back and improving this building. In particular, we're updating their jacuzzi spa and adding lockers. So this is the entry in question. We didn't change this. We looked at this in a couple different ways. I think a suggestion from a board member was to look at maybe enhancing this with a wood beam or doing a little more decoration. And after review and just kind of looking at the scale of the existing buildings, it's very modest. It's all plaster, real low scale. And we just felt like if we did anything more there, it might overemphasize that entry to a degree we just didn't think was appropriate for the building and kind of the modest look of that elevation.
Okay.
The next item, we can turn to A1.3. And this was a suggestion to look at the entry tower. And if you'll recall, the entry tower actually is hiding the elevator tower. And so we had an issue originally. We didn't know exactly how tall the elevator tower was going to be until we actually picked a specific model and could see what it would look like in section. But the main comment was to, in plans, step back whatever projection there is for the elevator tower so that we have this tower element actually reading as a square tower. And so we were able to do that by stepping it back on each side and hiding it really behind this tower element. Additionally, the overall height of this became much less than we originally thought. So it's very, very much hidden from view. And I think we can look at A3.5 as well. So this just shows previously this flat area came up almost even with our tower. And so now it's, as you can see in section here, where the roof comes behind, there's just a small triangular element that pokes up, and it's actually stepped back from the sides of the tower.
Do we have a exterior elevation of the whole building?
Yes. Well, it gets kind of hidden, of course, in our elevation, but we do have the renderings that we can take a look at as well. So let's see here. We'll see we have this chimney element that hides it. I think the best spot
is that it too? Or?
It's behind it.
Okay.
Let's see if we can find it. Of course, I don't know exactly where these are. Sorry about that. That's the one sheet I didn't commit to memory. We could probably come back to it.
Yeah, that's not a... Okay.
Let's see. So we can leave it on the elevation. Study the shape and detailing of the kitchen vent chimney feature to minimize its size. And that's this element here. At that time, we were unsure exactly how big it needed to be because we hadn't had the mechanical engineering done on the project. Since that time, we have accurate engineering that the engineers tell us exactly what we need to do. And with our input, and basically based on your input, we strove to make it as small as possible. So right now, we have this chimney element is this one. It's an intake, fresh air intake for the kitchen. And with this, we also had to add an additional chimney, which is here, which is the exhaust. I may have that reversed. And then this is an actual chimney at the fireplace. So previously we had a chimney here. It was much larger. And so we've reduced it per exactly the minimum requirements that are necessary for performing the functions that are needed.
Okay. So this one here is almost square, is it? This one? That's that one in the back,
That
right?
is this one back here.
Okay.
There's a little tiny guy right here. And that
Oh.
represents him.
Ah.
He's on the back side of the ridge.
I get it. Okay. Okay. Looking at that one.
And this one was required to be 10 feet away from the other one. So we can look at it.
Intake versus out.
Right.
Yeah.
And that was by code. And we can look at the plan real quick, too, just so you know exactly where it is. So previously this was over here and much larger. We moved it inboard where it really
Okay.
needs to be, and then the
Okay.
new one here.
All right.
Next, if we can turn to sheet 8.2.3, 8.2.1. Let's go here.
A 2.1 or 2.1?
Well, let's start here.
Okay.
So this provision is to look at the mechanical well height, and this, so we've done a separate sheet now for the mechanical well. And so look at the height, and this also ties in with landscaping too. So and Martha can address that. So what we've done is set the height. This is best to look here at the minimum dimension for essentially a guardrail wall.
Right.
And we had talked about that previously. So, and we decided that it made most sense to leave it at the same height around the whole well, because the reality is if we start stepping it down, then you're actually going to see the equipment in here a lot easier. We also had provisions that we needed to have exhaust louvers for fresh air louvers. Martha can talk about the specific landscaping, but tied in with this, we widened the landscape area by a foot. And then we also added a wood trellis over the top. So actually when you're up at the very top, you have the screening of the plantings, and then you also have the screening of the trellis, which we think also will help for sound and just kind of hide the mechanical well.
Are there plants on the trellis? Or is it just a wood trellis?
Just a wood trellis. This doesn't really depict what's going on. There will be landscaping out front here, and we can refer to the landscape plan. But in general, we did study that. Let me see if I missed anything else here. I believe the plants that Martha specified are to grow 6 feet in height. And I'm just going to move into item 7. This is basically talking about the same thing. Let's see if I have covered everything. But essentially, it said consider stepping the wall, and we looked at that, and it didn't seem to make sense to us. It just seemed like it exposed it more.
Okay.
Did you want to talk about the plantings?
Yeah, it's Martha from Arcadia, Martha DeGasis from Arcadia Studio. And the plantings that we chose in that planting space by the wall that's now 4 feet wide is a Calliandra hematocephala, or pink powder puff. It's kind of a viney shrub that can be trained to be flat against that wall, or it can be left to grow in a billowy fashion. Also, it can extend a little bit over that trellis, but we don't want to have too much plant material over that trellis dropping into the mechanical yard there. So I think that'll do a good job. I have a series of them along that wall there, so it can be sort of an espaliered plant and work well, I think, against that elevation, hide it from the neighbors uphill and from those walking on the walkway near it.
Okay.
Next was to study lowering the trash enclosure wall. And that is here. And before it was 5 feet. We've lowered it to 4 feet, and that's approximately 6 inches taller than the bins that it's meant to hide. So we thought that was an appropriate height. So you can see it here. It's also shown here.
Okay.
Study the 4 square tile on the chimneys. And I think that was just a comment that we might have been getting a little too cute with ornamentation, and so we just removed it.
Okay.
Just simplified it. It doesn't really appear on campus, so we just treated all the chimneys alike. We also removed the clay pots as well. Item 10 is study the window sills and headers for authentic detail and proportion. It's A6.2.
Okay.
And I'd also refer to our material board just to start with. So what we're trying to replicate, and which is seen on all the campus buildings, is this detailed stained wood header and this Saltillo tile, thick tile sill, which is also seen on every campus building. And so we don't want to reinvent the wheel. We want to mimic it. We want to make it look as good as possible. We want to make sure we can build it cost effectively and not kind of really blow their budget with doing a complete authentic wood beam, for instance. And this is another sill detail. And so what we've done previously, I just think we didn't have the details developed fully, and so we weren't really showing the true thickness of the material and how we were going to install it. This is the bench detail. Previously, we showed a much smaller piece of wood trim, and so we've increased this to a larger member that's going to actually create a better shadow line, look more authentic, and match what's on campus. Again, we have another sill detail that's, this is what we're trying to recreate. And then, this is kind of a large one. Study the paving details and layout. Let's go to the site plan. Just to refresh your memory, due to some stormwater management, we need these to be a pervious or permeable paver. And previously, we had a much larger paver shown. At that time, we hadn't fully developed exactly what material we're going to use. We also had a combination of concrete. Down here, we had brick and then concrete. And so I think what arose was that we need to look at it a little more consistently. And so that's what we've done. We actually found a great permeable paver, which we're doing in this pinwheel pattern. We're using it all in the upper plaza. We're utilizing a concrete border to essentially hold the pavers in. Or where there's not a border, we have a bench. And there's one area where we'll use an angle to hold it in place just so we can keep it up against this planter area so it doesn't move. And then the big change is down below, we've used the same material. So both at the entry below and the entry above, you have the consistent feel and look. The only thing we did a little different down here is just due to what we felt the proportions of the space, we made the border smaller just because it's a little more compact of an area. And I guess we just note, we've specified them, they're ADA pavers. They've been used, I believe, on the college campus.
I think he referred to there's some at UCSB.
And let me see, the last item is study the balance of paving throughout the project, and I think that really kind of covered it. That was all the paving.
Okay. All right,
So that's
you
it.
finished? Okay, with that, I open it up to public comment. Seeing no one, I close that portion, bring it back to Paul for questions.
No, I think it's fine. Are there no landscape drawings to talk about? Are we all happy?
We can't, are they in your set here? Yeah, they're in your
Are we
set.
losing an oak tree?
We are losing 2 oak trees.
And then is the city requiring mitigation? for
We
those?
have mitigation, but it's throughout the campus. We have 20 oak trees in mitigation proposed around the campus.
And where has that been documented?
It is documented in the plan set. Todd, help me out here. Where were we? Before plumbing, or?
You should be right after structural. Oh, you're at the front.
Okay. After civil. So we have a planting plan, which you've seen, but we can re-review if you'd like, and then tree protection plan, and then we have a overall campus plan where we designate locations for.
These are the 20 that are going to be
That's-
mitigating for the ones
That's
that's been
correct,
lost.
yeah, and we're working with, there's an arborist working with the campus right now for tree removals and replacements under a separate permit, and she's aware of this.
These
Arrangement.
replacement are based upon this permit.
Correct.
Okay, that's all. That's my only question.
Okay, Don? Yeah.
And my question was in regards to the oak trees too. She came in, the arborist, on consent earlier today, and there was concern about, I guess you're removing 4 oaks, is that right? That's why you have 20, 5-to-1
On
mitigation?
this project, we are removing 2 oaks, and then we have critical root zone intrusion on 2. So that's creating the proportion, and that's, you can see that on the sheet previous to this. So the LP3, there's a table that describes that we're impinging on the impacts right here in the bold. So
Okay, so it wasn't just the 2 removed, you also had to mitigate for the impact
the
on the others?
impact, yeah.
I see. Okay, I think I am understood then. That's it.
Okay, I just had some small questions here. When you enter that spa, when you go through that opening, the elevation shows that there's a blank wall there. So you go left and right, is that it?
We can look at the plan. I think there's an art niche right as you enter.
What?
Let's see. See if I can find this. Well, it's just
Oh, it's a
curving wall.
slightly curved wall. Okay, it's in fairly deep too. Okay, and then is 6.2. Let's just come back here. Yeah, 6.2. I just looking at this very thin detail here. How thick is that tile?
There's a picture of it.
It's 3/4 of an inch. That's what was specified.
Okay.
The bottom of this one, I think.
Right down there. That's exactly it.
So that's the detail that you're just copying.
That's correct.
That existing. Okay. And then lastly, I was looking at the detail that you have at the top of the mechanical screen wall is a similar detail to what you use on all of your rooftop chimneys, the chimney heads. So is that a conscious effort that you really want to do that as opposed to, I mean, I look at the top of some of these walls that has a detail like that. And my question is only is that the distinguishing between an above roof chimney element and something that you have that's coming out of the ground at a person level, at a human scale level, where it's either like a low wall, anything below 4 feet, like a screen wall, and the fact that you're using that same detail, is that something that you consciously decided to do here, as opposed to maybe trying to stay with some of those other parapet walls that you have at walkways and courtyards and stuff like that, and terraces?
I would say in general, it is more conscious than not. I mean, I think our idea is we really don't want that area to be really exposed. We're trying to really hide it, so we just
Right.
want a simple little detail. I think this might be trying to do too much. This is obviously in a very prominent area at a cafe or the roof deck. I think the idea is that people don't even notice that mechanical well is what we're hoping for. And so, we don't really want anyone to be able to get up and touch and feel it, experience it. It's really going to be screened by the landscaping.
Okay, so essentially what you're just downgrading the importance of it. So you just, okay, so you'd rather have something there as opposed to nothing. That's as opposed to a wall with no ornamentation. You've just put something there. And okay, all right. And I had a little issue with the alignment of these horizontals with the, but I think I'll leave that to as a personal level. I'm all right. Okay, so I'm open for. What are we reviewing for, Tony? What level? Final? We haven't done comments yet. You know that? We haven't done comments yet. Paul?
I have no comments. It's ready for final.
Yeah, I almost did my comments already. But
Yeah, and I think we scrutinized this pretty heavily over the last several times. I think they've responded to everything that we've asked them to. Everything looks great.
okay. And you have comments? Okay. And I don't have any more. I think I'm comfortable. So, I'm open for a motion.
After I said that, I did think of one, but it's really minor.
Okay. You can
And it doesn't
give you a comment.
It doesn't even belong in the minutes. The elevation, that trellis that you put over the mechanical well looked like it was being supported by 2 points. Maybe you need.
It's got 4. There's 4 columns.
Well, how long is that beam? I'm thinking that you're going to need one in the middle so that you can splice that beam, but that's something you'll discover later in life. I'd like
Later
to-
in life.
I'll
Like
make
tomorrow.
a motion to give the project final as submitted.
Okay. Do I have a second? Second. Under discussion. All those in favor of the motion, please say aye. Aye. Against? That motion carries.
Abstain.
One abstention. You're good to go.
Thank you.
Okay, guys. That's a lot of people. Oh, you're welcome. Okay, and that brings us to the final item of the evening. 3825 State Street.
He's in the hallway. We're 10 minutes behind schedule.
Dad, burn it.
It's only because they gave us 30 minutes.
I gotta get faster. Yeah.
You have 5 minutes to do your presentation.
5?
Yes.
Make it 6?
Kidding. You're getting spoiled with short meeting.
Short meetings, yeah. Yeah.
See, I have 3 new sets just with new graphics,
New graphics.
additional context graphics.
Yeah.
You can give that to Dawn.
Oh, is that this it? Do
I
we
can look
have
at this one. I can look at that one. Just put it over there.
1, 2,
you have-
3,
you have
4? Is
more?
4 enough?
Yeah, there's only 4 of us, so I'll look at this one and look at his own.
Okay. Yes, state your name and do we have a minutes there, Tony?
New project.
New project. Okay.
Trey Lindell with Macerich.
And I'm Ryan Mills with DMA. And yeah, so we're looking at a new project at La Cumbre Plaza, but it looks familiar because we came maybe a month or 2 ago with a project that was looking at revising the current criteria out there. And then if you remember,
immediately after we looked at Papyrus going into Building E. And I guess a quick recap on that was we kind of felt the board would like us to consider moving forward with the current guidelines as best we could to get projects through sooner, and just to describe to you how they may comply, how they may not, and do our best to sort that out. And as you remember, Papyrus, just under the circumstances, just couldn't be approved as is, as being sort of a old-fashioned TI, so they went ahead and did interior only, and they're maybe opening this week. So that's the status. So we're back to you today. So we went back and worked with Trey and Macerich, and the approach we're looking at now is coming back under the current guidelines and looking at Building E. So ownership would like to do a finished project or a capital project to Building E for two reasons. First being Papyrus being in there now still may have an opportunity to do a facade improvement kind of after we come along and do a bigger improvement to the building. So that was part of the deal. And then also, which is here, and then on the opposite internal corner, they have a potential new tenant coming in there. So we'd like to move ahead and try to get past this bigger improvement. And then sort of a second part to that is this will kind of show you as a direction moving forward. We're studying together improvements to the rest of the mall, the exterior of the mall, and we'll show some context as part of this presentation. We designed this with the adjacent buildings in mind as well as the whole project in mind. So this being sort of taking the temperature and seeing if it'll be a successful way to move forward as far as architecture and details and some of the components. So actually, before we do that, I just want to bring up the criteria and kind of give us a context of how to best, or a framework to make decisions. I feel like in the past there's been a little bit of tension between how to make decisions with this and misunderstandings. And really, the origin of this document was created by Macerich to assist ownership and new tenants to help upgrade the mall and actually move through the process faster. So, to some degree, this was 2007. To some degree, that worked pretty well. And to date, we say there's about 50 to 60% of the facades have turned over, and some work had been done. And then really, starting maybe 2 years ago, it really stopped being effective due to the economic climate. And I know that's not always a consideration we all take, but here it's a real one. So the catalyst of this document has really now begun to fail helping tenants get in due to their constraints. I mean, we went back and studied what it takes to do some of these upgrades and did a crunch of all the tenants that we've been involved with, and there's significant cost to, especially once we dug into the diaphragm, which are now completely cost prohibitive for tenants, and we've lost a couple recent opportunities for big improvements because they're just opting out or opting to do interior only. So we're really looking forward to, working within these guidelines. We don't want to pull a fast one, but we just want to find something that's successful for these guys, successful for the tenants, and that we can all agree will be successful architecture. So that's sort of the guidelines. And just really, I'm hoping we can use it that way, fully understanding it's full discretion on your part on what's approvable, but we're hoping we can use these as a guideline. And I've taken up my 5 minutes.
Just
Okay.
on that part.
Okay. So here's
We
this-
get it.
Okay, thank you. Moving on. So here's our project. So Building E is the Marmalade Building. So you can see out front, that work was done several years ago, actually just prior to the guidelines. And then inside the mall is that existing canopy structure. There's two corner elements and then the canopy that runs along. It wraps around three sides. There's a few tenants that exist underneath. I have elevations in two, but this just sort of helps you remember what that's looking like out there currently. So here's existing Marmalade. This is that parking lot. And here's the existing tenants. And this is the area of work. This is where that existing canopy lives and columns stand. And really what we're proposing this time is to keep all that and seeing if we can address it. There's existing in Marmalade, which there's no proposed work to. And then the two side paseo elevations existing. And you can see here's one of those unresolved places where Marmalade came in, did their tenant improvement, and we were left sort of with these odd in-betweens of projects. And then this is the interior paseo. And in the proposed, I'm going to show the tenant context. So let's see. Let's start at the bottom. Again, this is that interior paseo. So one balancing act we have is to work within the confines of existing tenants and their agreements. So we have, kind of as before, tenant storefronts that are under agreement that we can't touch. And as moving forward, we'd like to create sort of a block building, something you might find in a cityscape, you might find downtown, albeit in the mall. But so as part of a rhythm to have a whole block with the Spanish vernacular, with tenants moving in and out. And then these will constantly change, so that'll be organic, as well as demising lines of stores can change over time. So it didn't make any sense to try to line up, say, columns with current store breaks to give you context. So the main components are we're utilizing the existing columns but dressing them up. So everything gets a new stucco coat. New lanterns, and then the parapet above, we're coming with a more subtle parapet detail with tile cap on top. And these boxes here and even in the arched corner elements are subtle relief. So we have about an inch depression here just to create little shadow lines, and the corner arches are maintained. Coming around the corner here, here's the corner element, and here we brought down in that funny transition. The last project there was a little ATM. This is Marmalade. We wanted to try to resolve that corner as is to bring down a second column. Here's that reflected on the south side. And then here I have some context. And this is where the additional buildings kind of come into play. We felt it was really important to show these for a couple reasons. First, a comment that came up last time was, wasn't the original intent of the guidelines to chop up the mall into a bunch of little stores? And in all fairness, yeah, the idea was to break it up. So what I wanted to show was there was a place or there was a room for some sort of greater rhythm of small, medium, and large. So here is your current or former Ruth's Chris. And then you can see we move into these smaller buildings up to Tiffany, which is sort of a medium. And then here we come up to our block building with multiple tenants. You can see we have the tower elements, which kind of go towards the guideline. And then we go to another paseo. Then here's sort of two medium-sized buildings, a current Williams-Sonoma, and then this is a PacSun, but yet to be addressed. And then so we think there's some organic rhythm to be had where all three sizes are acceptable. And then the other point of this graphic was to show you how we want to address, the parking lot elevation. So, we didn't want to design this in a vacuum, so we wanted the context of this, but also the context of, what components will make sense dressing up the parking lot. So we have here's a section from Starbucks that would be addressed, and then here's a section next to Williams-Sonoma, which would complete the parking lot facade. And what one desire was, there's this organic downtown feel with all these different storefronts, but we wanted a mix. There was some elements, especially on the outside, that we needed to pull together to be, a Spanish colonial mall being in town. So that's what these are trying to reflect, some of the same design components. And this is a Building E project, but you can see we're just moving forward and designing these together, kind of based on how this goes, but wanting to show you where the mall would like to take the rest of the improvements. We're trying to do subtle, but do the right details. Here's sort of taking the similar elements, creating a storefront effect, filling in with landscape, And then here's that Starbucks section, addressing them simply, and then again a similar detail, but maybe breaking it up where there's existing egress points. So we felt this was important to show. Let's see. And here's a couple typical sections. One, this is showing what this looks like cut through the middle of that colonnade. So here's that existing tenant space, which will go all the way up to the top. We'll be addressing this, and we wanted to keep this colonnade as high as possible. We studied a few variations, but just the draw for tenant and light, we just wanted to keep it as high as possible, and wanted to cap it a little nicer. And then this is a section through the corner arch. This is the arches at the corner, showing we're a little bit taller, and again how the corner parapets are a little taller. And finally, just some context views. So this is the Tiffany in the foreground looking, just starting to show you in person how the architecture works, how the scale works. There's definite ways where we comply with the guidelines. We're trying to bring the Spanish language in, was one, just because where tenants had freedom, they tended to go contemporary. So we felt like we'd go back to bring more Spanish in the mall. And we also achieve the intent of the guidelines, I think, with the corner elements. We don't completely meet it. We're about 18 inches shy at the corners, so we can talk for comment, but we don't actually feel we need to. We feel like the proportions are working pretty good. Here's us looking from Williams-Sonoma, which is a pretty large mass. So again, same details, and here's just context on the two side paseos, seeing how those resolve at Marmalade, how we turn the corner there, and then also on the opposite corner. I'm not sure if that's the coach team. So that's it. Just to recap, where we're at here, we'd like feedback, but we'd like to, if we get comfortable, we'd like a project approval if we think we're comfortable moving this direction, seeing kind of the future improvements. And that's the gauge we're trying to get for tonight.
Okay, so with that, I'd like to open it up for public comment. Seeing no one, bring that back to questions from Paul.
Let's go back to the section that you cut through. Sure. It's a question.
Yep.
This area here, can this be punctuated? Can this be opened up? And if we go to the next drawing, this area above here, I don't know how much can be, but my question is, can that be punched?
The returns?
No, I mean like
With a
3
window.
holes, like at Williams-Sonoma. I think we
With an
had them
opening,
add upper story.
Like a second story.
So structurally, because of all the gymnastics involved, can you punch a hole, or how?
Possibly.
force-
I don't know.
Okay.
But that's something we can look at. But that's possible.
That's all. Don?
No questions.
Chris?
So just so I'm clear, we're basically taking a look at this as an overall concept for E and the direction that you're moving for the rest of the La Cumbre Plaza. Is that right?
Building E is a standalone project that we're looking to move through and get approved and built, and then tenants to go in. And then I wanted to show you C and G were the adjacent buildings to show how we intend to
The direction
keep
there.
addressing the rest of the mall, kind of based on the architectural elements here. So yeah, some of its context. Building E is approval.
Okay. Thank you.
And let me just continue with that trend here. Show building E as it's separated from the other elements. Building E is what you're trying to get approved right now.
Yeah,
So
right.
show me the. Is this E?
Yeah.
This is
Yes.
E?
Yeah, this is
Right.
the existing and proposed.
So what you showed us on this end here is what you're trying to get approved.
Yeah.
For
This whole pack, yeah, that's correct. This whole package is E, except for this context, these context elevations. We just wanted to show. I think one of the comments came up just showing context a little more.
Okay.
But this is E. This is E. So this is our project.
Okay, and you're trying to get this approved as a, you're trying to get this approved as a pre-approval to coming back later with whatever happens here?
This is a project we're looking for.
Or you're seeing this, you're seeing
its
this as all of that?
Yeah, this is an ownership project to address this. It would essentially, since Marmalade is here, we want to complete this whole building. And the concept is then stores keep turning through in the arcade of this building. Yeah, this is a once and final type of idea. This is a capital improvement project, ownership project, which will come and get done completely.
Okay. Chris, you clear on that? Yeah. Okay. So I have no other questions. Paul, comments?
I'll go last. I'll go first. I'm having difficulty with it just because I can see it just being second rate or not. It's not complete following your design ideas. I know the economy has taken everything for a spin. But I try to look at what existing now and where you're going, and is it a significant enough of a leap? And I really don't see this as a significant enough change worthy of all this stuff. And if you're going to go through the effort, you might as well make it halfway there instead of just 10% there. Because all you're really doing is you're ripping off the crown molding off the top, and you're plastering it a different color, and you're adding new light fixtures, and you're saying you're done. And I'm looking at it going, why even bother? I mean, you're not moving it enough. And the real telling point is when you look at it as a big elevation and you look at these corners, and these corners, proportion-wise, rhythm-wise, it doesn't work. Or it just seems funky or awkward, or this just seems abnormal. And little comments like this, I can understand how they're there. Like this column, I like this proportion, but as soon as you start adding more columns, it messes up on the circulation. So I understand why we got here, but at the end of the day, it's like if you're not going to touch this thing, touch the two corners and make the corners work one way or another, or maybe even leave this crown molding up here and simplify what you do here so you have more money to make these corners work, or rip off the two corners and make this crown molding look. But so far what I sense is the overall movement is not enough worthy of the time and effort. It's not falling into place, just because there's still too many awkward conditions that haven't yet to be resolved that'll be there for another 15 years or longer. So I'm not comfortable with what I'm seeing.
Thanks, Paul. Don?
I see it a little differently, actually, and that is, I see what Paul's saying, I see what you're saying, but I'm looking at it more in terms of it's better than it was, but where I do agree with Paul is that it's not quite there, but I think you're really close to doing something that I think would be better, a lot better than what's there now, and if that's all you want to do, I'm kind of the opinion of moving it along in a forward direction instead of just blocking the project by saying you're not doing enough. I don't know if that makes any sense. But so where I think that it's not quite there for me is these inlaid pieces. I'm not really getting that unless it's supposed to be for signage, and I don't really think that's a great place for signage, so I don't get those. But I think that, I like arcades. I think that if you didn't have anything here, then it looks like a plaster box sitting on columns, which isn't working either. So if there's a way to incorporate more of a traditional detailing where there's a frieze and then a smaller plaster space, and then a crown, and then the tile. Something that's more traditional that you actually would see, downtown. You were saying this is something we would see downtown, but the proportions of this is kind of tricky on how to work that out. And for instance, when you turn the corner on that arch, on this corner you have a straight header, and then on this side and the other side it's an arch. And you did it because this is a full arch, and then that was just a half space. Maybe that one, I don't know how that terminates, but maybe it needs to be a half arch to complete that one little area. But that's where I think it's not successful, is just this space in here and in these little reveals. And, maybe you can convince me that there is an appropriate solution to doing the reveals, because there is some Spanish colonial architecture that has reveals used in a little bit different way with a little more detailing around them. So I would say look for a more, just a little bit more traditional approach to that. And I wouldn't be one to, if you could show me that, I wouldn't be one to prevent you from going forward, because I think this whole tenant design criteria has gotten you guys into a bit of a quandary, and it was a big nut to bite off and to commit to, and we have given you guys a hard time about coming in and not meeting the own guidelines that you prepared for yourself. But anyway, I think you could have something here. I don't like the gooseneck fixture, but I don't know where that came from. You're not showing it here, but
generic.
there was something on this section that didn't look right to me. So.
Chris? Well, thank you, Mr. Chair. I really don't have much to add. I think I would side with Don on this, in that it's certainly better than it was, or what's the existing condition is, but there are some awkward things happening there. And so, like I said, I won't add too much, but I think Don's on the right track with there might be some minor modifications that can be done to get it through, but I don't think it's a definite no at this point.
Okay, thanks, Chris. I appreciate the approach, but I don't see it solving problems. I don't see it solving the what you're after. I don't see this approach being able to make it better, and that's where I'm coming from. Is just that I visualize things happening in here, and what I'm seeing is that the system that you've designed, which is to make this whole building look like one long building, does not give it the solutions already. It's not built into this design. If there were things happening in here that reinforce this approach, I think it could be looked at in more detail. But as saying that this solution solves as a design solution for this building, for whatever will come after inside, to me it just doesn't provide an envelope in which that can happen on the scale that needs to happen in the mall to keep what has already been done, to keep that within that band of success. I feel that this drops back, for me, to a level that is very much lower than the goal that we'd like to have here. I mean, just as Don says, that was a well-detailed approach that gave targets for everybody to hit and stuff like that. But if you took that and you sifted through it, and you really ask yourself, what are the main benefits of that? The main benefits of that were certainly a good, strong design directive on how to make this mall a better place. The parts that really started to make it expensive and stuff like that is taking each one of those elements and trying to hit the mark in each one. But if you just take the main things that was after, strengthening the visual gateways, making it, or each store add to this pedestrian type of experience, those kind of things, what is the surface material you walk on, make sure the landscaping and the voids in the entranceways create these central plazas or whatever it is. I mean, these are all key planning elements that I think is laudable, that should stay in any document, whether you replace that document with a thinner one or whatever. Those main goals are good planning goals. And I think that while we may, for me, I mean, I'm talking about me, if I were to look at coming down from that, I'm certainly open to that, but that does not mean that you lose sight of what the overall goal is. It's just how you achieve that in terms of the strength and the amount of detailing and that sort of thing. And I feel that this does not answer. It doesn't answer what it is. It's trying to, and I don't mean to belittle the effort at all. So please don't take it that way. What it's trying to do is alleviate a hurdle that's built into your structure that's there already. You're trying to alleviate the hurdle from having to deal with it at all, as opposed to dealing with it and making a viable solution to make all the elements within it work cohesively. And if you took a very common rhythmic thing like this over a huge element of, say, an old town or something like that, the strength is in the shell already of the architecture, how big these buttresses are and how old and ornate and where do they come from, because it's historic, trying to hold up the base and stuff like that. But if you take what you have here, it's almost it's like a thin shell that's creating this rhythmic thing. It doesn't have a strong enough character to stand on its own, to bolster what's going to come behind it. So then what you end up, if we approve this, or is that we approve the shell, which is weak already, and then you have to come behind that and make things work with it. So it doesn't have enough strength on its own to say that it's the direction that we should go in, because it's not solving anything. I mean, even in this plan already, I see so many things that are not working well, and so that's why I just can't find, I can't find that this is a solution. Yes, it's white. It's changed the color of it white. You take the little detailing off the end. The colonnade is still tall and narrow. It lacks a pedestrian kind of scale. It is already buying into a rhythm of what is existing within this already doesn't work that very well. So, I just can't get
Mr.
there.
Chair.
I just can't get there.
Can I make a suggestion that's a little more tangible to the applicant?
Sorry.
To go along with your commentary of,
How do you?
and that's, he was getting to it at the very end. It's because of the placement. I mean, if I could try to help the applicant, I think what you're trying to say is that, and what I was pointing at is, the proportion's not right. There's too much space between the columns, and it's not a human scale. So it wouldn't be something that you would see. And you're trying to work with the existing rhythm of the columns that are spindly existing. It's going to make it really difficult for you. I don't think it's impossible, but I think it may get to the point where, in order to make something that is right from a proportion standpoint, it might costs more than it's worth. I don't know, but it's the height and the distance between the columns that is a big issue, in my opinion. Because, like I said, there are arcades, and you can see arcades.
Two things. One is the existing columns that are there, I don't remember enough about it, but is there one structural post and it's wrapped with stuff, or is it like a CMU block, 16, 24 inches wide, all structural?
It's not structural.
It's not, so there's one
Oh, they're
post in
not
there?
structural?
No, there's like a bait. Well, there's kind of a poured base.
Go back to the photos. There's photos up there. What it looks
Well,
like.
it was interesting, if you take a look at this
Yeah.
drawing up
Exactly.
here.
Right.
And then you might be able to narrow up the posts and have more of them, and then add some articulation kind of
And
stuff.
I know you
That-
wanted to keep
Yeah.
keep this high, but this is part of the problem, is the height and then the distance. It's
The issue we're going to have, where it's going to be a non-starter, is I have existing tenants in there, and I cannot put a column that'll block its storefront view, and I can't lower it where it blocks their view.
But maybe the arcade becomes, instead of columns, it becomes walls between arches that are the right proportion. I mean, and they're thicker. I don't know. I mean, maybe that blocks out too much light. It's
That's
just,
something you're always going to be faced with that problem, and that's going to always give you a difficulty. So one of the things that you're already buying yourself, or you're trying to buy yourself into already, is that problem. If you went this route, you're buying that problem for yourself, and it causes problems. And I'm just wondering if in trying to erase this hurdle that has been tormenting you in a way, if you are not causing more trouble for yourself in the end, when you come back with all these individual things,
Well,
I just think that sometimes you're losing the big picture in a way, and I would rather.
I guess if I may, I guess to address this head on, yes, we're looking to, this project really is looking to dress up what's there.
Right.
So really the issue is either that's acceptable or not. Yeah, we're buying this problem
Right.
and seeing where we can go to, how much can we make this nicer or
Right.
not?
and some of us
That's
are
really
saying
what
that
this
you
is about.
might. Some of us are saying you
ag-
might be able to, and some of us are
Right.
saying that they think it might not be possible.
These bigger issues, we don't disagree. So it's
Right.
really, we're trying to gauge what can we accomplish. If we can't do that, then it may be nothing. So that's
Yeah.
what we're really trying to determine. And
Yeah.
so we don't disagree with many of the concepts. So I guess if there's room to fix up what's there, that's what we'd like to hear. Or if there's not any room to fix up what's there, that's what we need to know. That's really where
Yeah,
we
I'd like to make a motion.
Yeah, from my point of view, I think that I couldn't see you doing it in this two-phase. I couldn't approve it in this two-phase. For me, in this two-phase where you approve this colored skin, and then you come back individually with all the things inside to try and make it work with the skin. So
okay.
that's where I'm having a problem, because I think that you need to see some of these things being resolved instead of potential additional problems. And what I'm seeing are potential additional problems.
Because before this criteria, that's exactly what it was, is you had a building facade, and then you had tenants who came in with their TIs and just did the storefront.
Right.
Okay? So what we're talking, just to be honest, what we're talking about now, this thing is much more involved in scope. There's nothing going to be done. So you're going to look at it as it existing, and storefronts they're just going to go in and plop their sign. And I don't know how that does anyone any good.
Well, I don't think that you can. To me, I can't use the logic of somebody saying, well, I'm not going to do anything, so you're going to end up with something that's not going to happen, so you either approve something or you're not going to get anything. I don't know how to.
And that's
use
not where
that
I
as
was.
a-
I wasn't there either. I didn't think it
I
was there
can't
yet.
use that as a logic. I have to try and find what is the best way to move it forward visually.
Actually,
And that's kind of what I'm about more than anything
I have a really important question for me. So I think what I heard you say is you wouldn't be comfortable with the idea to approve sort of an arcade shell with different tenants expressing themselves inside. Is that?
Well, I'm not knowing what the problems will occur when each one of those shells get broken up. It
Right.
will create more. For me, you have a rhythm. You're saying we want this rhythm already, and I see problems with the rhythm with the existing buildings, and I'm thinking that when these existing buildings get changed out, it's likely that you're going to have another set of conflicts,
Right.
because you have this existing rhythm that you're reinforcing, right? And to me, the existing rhythm that you're reinforcing is just not strong enough to stand on its own, so that when those other things get remodeled, they can fall within that rhythm and create great architecture or good architecture. I just don't see it. It's not far enough quality-wise to be able to bridge that gap for me.
Mr.
Yeah.
Chair, so we have two choices in an effort to kind of move this along. We can either deny the project, somebody can make a motion to deny the project and see if it passes. I don't think it will. We're kind of at a deadlock, but I'd rather at this point make a motion and see if it flies to continue the project and let them take, they know the concerns that we all have, and to let them decide if they think that they can come up with a solution that is a more traditional human scale approach to an arcade type concept.
I'm happy to give them the flexibility. I kind of hear from Ryan that he may not want it that way.
Okay.
He may want you to. We're happy to. Yeah, we're happy to facilitate you, to give you the freedom that you would like, if you would like to take another crack at the nut.
Yeah. Well,
it's.
Yeah, I guess there's no harm in just coming back indefinitely, correct? I mean, there's no, right, Trey? Do you have the same feeling?
Yeah, but with my existing, I just don't see it. I mean, it'd be fine to look at it, but I just don't see
Right.
how it works.
Yeah.
Well, would you like that just so you can
Yeah.
decide
Have
what
that
you want to do?
option. Yeah.
And if it
At
dies
least
on the
give
vine,
option.
it just does?
Yeah,
Right.
At least give the option.
Mr. Chair, just two brief comments. One is the direction I was going to go was you've got a chunk of money, and you can spread it everywhere equally on all your elevations, or you can take that money and locate it in two locations and keep what you have existing and just change the paint color. All right, so that you're maximizing your money in a couple areas to correct a couple of problems, understanding you're not going to be able to correct everything because it's going to be way too much money. The second point is Vaughn's came through here, and they took a 1960s pretty darn ugly facade and they remodeled it, and we pushed them as much as we could, but we didn't want to push them so they'd go away. Your building's not that ugly. So that's where I'm saying the changes that you're proposing isn't significantly different than what you already have. So I'm saying, why don't you spend your money in certain areas and go for the punch and realize there's certain areas that you're just not going to touch, and it's existing, it's just existing.
And I was kind of limiting my comments to what's in front of me
Yeah.
instead of trying to tell you where to spend your money. I mean, I was just commenting on what they have and that it's not there yet.
No, but that's valuable to us because of the nature of this conversation. You know, I appreciate it. That's useful to us.
Good. We try to be useful sometimes.
So I'll float a motion, indefinite continuance back to full board. Applicant is to provide additional information about the design of the restudy the proposed project, and get back to the full board.
I'll second.
Second.
Do you want to state anything about how to restudy in a more traditional manner, or do you want to?
They all listened, and she doesn't need to type it down, and it's on videotape.
Okay.
Including his
Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm okay with that.
Okay.
But I'm not.
Maybe if it, you know what we want.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Against, motion carries. Okay, sorry about that.
See,
One thing I will
want
say,
to- yeah, go ahead.
yeah, I just want to say, I mean, I look at, you've had some high-profile people come in and spend big bucks, and that seemed to me like it was on one end, that was really high-end stuff that they went and did, And they may have done that because of this thing, or they may have just done that because that's their product, like the, you know, those jewelry people and all that. I mean, they wanted, that's how they build all their stuff.
You want to end the meeting first?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, sorry. Yeah, with that, I'd like to adjourn today's meeting. Thank you, and good night, Santa Barbara.
That's fine. No,
So-
they did because.